Hey everyone, thank you all for joining us here. Welcome to the fourth show of the Gray Stage live stream. And I have Sophia here with me. Hey Sophia.
Hey everybody.
Greetings, and we
I
got
hope
an.
everyone is doing great. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's all good. We're live here. So I know we got another person on the line too. If you'd like to jump in there, please feel free at any time. We're going to.
Pansy here.
Hey Pansy, how are you?
Oh, I'm making it.
Oh, you made it. Good.
I'm making
Glad to
it.
hear that. That's always a good thing when we're on this side of the dirt. Unfortunately,
Right on.
tonight we're going to be talking about people that aren't. Well, I mean, depending on your
Mhm.
theory, I guess, unless you think they're dead, and unless you think that they're not dead, that they faked their own death, or that somebody faked their death. Yeah. So I know that's been a big theory too. That was one of the early theories. Really, was that they had faked their death. They're in Hollywood. They're living out their dream. They're in witness protection, like some Hillary Clinton. I know that's come back up again too. I'm starting to see that again. You just never know. But what we really want to do here, we can always talk about anything, but what we really want to do here is kind of go over the factual documents, go over the research, try to stick to the facts, try to leave our theories out of it as much as possible, which is almost impossible because when you look at the valid theories, and there are a lot of valid theories out there. I just don't want to get too caught up into one theory when I'm still at point A here, 5 years later. So, as long as everything is good here, I'm gonna see if we are actually. Probably should check if we're live on YouTube. That would probably help, or else we're just sitting here talking to
We're live.
ourselves.
We're live.
Okay. I'm curious where it shows up because I'm looking on my channel right now. Yeah, I'm looking. I mean, I'm looking at it right now, and I do not see any indication that we are live. But whatever. YouTube
Oh,
is
I
not my
always do
friend.
this refresh,
Okay. Oh, okay.
and
There
it's
it
too
is.
much.
I see. All right. Just checking on that. Okay. So I think last we left off at about page 56, page 57. Again, we are going to try our best to keep this to about 60 minutes. It's been pretty much impossible so far, but that is ultimately our goal. So that's where we're going to go. Before I get started here, Sophia or Pansy, anything you want to say while we open up?
Yes, I would like to ask everyone to read that post that we posted this evening about Arcticide.
Mhm.
It is really, really, really interesting. It's about Clintons and how they get away with people, and it sounds so much like what we're reading.
That was posted in the
So much like,
that was posted in the group, right?
Mhm.
yeah,
Yes.
Let's see if I can pull that up here.
it is so interesting.
What do
So
you guys?
much like what we're into.
Yeah, it is. Okay, here it is. I got it up right here. Examining Jeffrey Epstein's death as Arkanside with special guest Larry Nichols. Larry Nichols, that's an interesting character too. Interesting person to research for sure. Now, what do you guys think? You think? I mean, Colleen just asked us to just listen to the first 5 minutes, and the first 5 minutes are
Well,
like,
no,
and you listened
actually,
to
the
the whole
whole
thing.
thing.
Uh,
Okay,
did you?
yes, almost. It's interesting all the way through it. It's about things that aren't normal ways of death, you know. Especially this one dude, both of his hands were cut off. Uh, his spine was severed in back, and his feet were cut off. And then he torched himself, which that's impossible if you don't have hands or feet, you know, or whatever. I had to think with. It's just really, really odd.
Yeah,
Really odd.
it certainly
And
is.
and they did things to where they couldn't be investigated. They had people working for them, uh, lots of people that covered up a lot of stuff, where it couldn't be found out. It's really interesting. Y'all need to watch it.
Yep, I would
Make you
agree.
think about what happened to David now.
I can remember, gosh, when I first came to the group, I was like, "Good, don't ban me," but it almost sounds like the Clintons were in on this. And I can remember Greg posting back, I was like, "Why would I ban you?" But yeah, I mean, the Crowley murders, you have to ask yourself, did they have anything? But as far as I can tell from my research, I haven't come across anything that they would have had on the
Um,
Clintons.
what about that donor list that they had, or there was some list in David's in his office bedroom in the printer actually, and it's a list of the top 100 or 200 contributors or donors. Never really got a clear answer exactly for what that donor list was for, but
Now, the donor list is very interesting because there's quite a few people who are no longer living, either tragic car accidents or plane crashes or murder suicides. So that is a really interesting list
In that
too.
list?
Mhm.
Oh my God.
Yes.
wow.
Uh, in fact, there was another Minnesota couple, very, very wealthy. They are listed on that list. I believe it's the
Yeah.
back page of the list. Um, and there was just a quote unquote murder suicide. Was it back in June or May? Something like that. It was several months ago. And that's when I really started looking into the list because something inside my
Uh,
head clicked and said, they're in Minnesota. I'm going to look at the list to see if they're on it. And lo and behold, they were.
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
and I do believe you can find that list. I pulled up an image here, but the image is not that good. But you can find that list in the BCA 485 page document. Right now we're going through the 488 page, which is the most recent one. But in the 485 page document, or PDF of documents and all that, you can find every other page, because when they scanned this list, they only scanned one side of the page. They did not scan both sides, unfortunately, which it would have been nice if they would have scanned both sides. I'm sure they meant to and just didn't. It just didn't work out that way. But yeah, the the contribution. I mean, these totals are, there's a lot of money. We're talking. I mean, the number one is almost $10 million. What it looks like. So,
Oh
uh,
my goodness.
yeah, and then kind of drops down to about 2.2, goes down more from that. But we're talking. I think it's the top 100 or the top 200.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead
That's
and,
interesting.
yeah, that really is. And when you start thinking about this stuff and how it ties, or if it ties, of course we can, our minds can actually wander a bit, but there's nothing wrong with that, because we are just talking about this, trying to find out what happened, what is possible, what is plausible, and of course what really happened here. So, unless you have anything else, Pansy, on
No,
that.
that's it.
Okay. And Sophia?
Mm-mm.
All right.
No.
I know we have Walter listening in. I'm not sure if he's gonna chime in, but I do appreciate you, Walter, for listening in here.
Yep,
And
hello there.
hey, Walter, how are you, man?
I'm doing fine, just learning and growing with this and looking at this investigation as I found it most intriguing due to the availability of facts, and it seems like the ignorance of those who are running cases like this to follow them.
Right. That's it. And then PIs that are hired later to
Yes,
fall into the same category. Kind of. They just no, it's fine. Nothing to see here.
yes, it's kind of interesting how this case gets buried the more they dig into it, so to speak.
Right. That's true. That's always been an issue here with this case and so many other cases. But again, we'll keep marching on here.
Got to keep prodding on, going for it.
That's right. All right, so right now we are looking at page 57 of the 488-page document, and we are looking at some of the back and forth between the BCA analysts. And we left off, I believe last time we left off to where it was February 18th, February 19th, right before they're about to find item 57, the bullet that they missed and weren't able to discover till 1 month later. One day before that, or maybe actually on the same day is what it looks like. They have still not charged anybody in this case, and that was found, I believe, on page 56. So on page 56, they're very clear to say we have not charged anybody in this case. This is actually at the top of page 57. And this is from Tommy Booth to DPS Catherine Roach. Good morning, Catherine. Nobody has been charged in this case, so I am giving your permission to use up some evidence in its entirety for DNA analysis. So it's very, very clear. Not only have they not charged anybody in the case, they never do charge anybody in this case, which leads back to the same question of why we are supposed to believe that David Crowley is guilty. And what is it based on? Because it sounds like it's based on a theory. And like we've been talking about here, nothing wrong with theories, nothing wrong with talking about theories, but theories don't necessarily make fact. Now, there is obviously one theory that will lead to the facts, and that is the theory of the truth. Whatever that is, and God knows what that is, whatever it is, that is what really happened. That's the only theory that I think that we should be kind of moving forward to, is whatever the truth is. And then at that point, it obviously is not theory, it is fact. Walter, anything here you want to say about this case, or else we're just going to we're just been wadding through some of these pages, and we're just going to, I'm going to read some stuff, we're going to look at these documents, and then we'll get people's comments on them.
Okay, well, one thing that has intrigued me about this case is, one, the lack of interest to really get to what you're talking about, the theory of the truth, in which they have thrown out. What intrigues me is that a police department, Apple Valley in this case, came to a conclusion quickly, and I'm sure in that document there's a listing of what their conclusion was based on. And in all of the times that I have been listening in on this, I have seen no real evidence for them to come to any conclusion. It, in fact, is the exact opposite of what they conclude based on the evidence and things that they look at, from my perspective, that I have seen and heard from Catherine and you in looking at it. And one of the issues is, what other department other than Apple Valley was involved in this case? I know there were others than just Apple Valley Police Department, if I am not mistaken.
That's right.
That there were others looking at this, and they seemed to back up Apple Valley in a sense, without any real review of the evidence as we've seen it, and it just brings up questions. How did they overcome those hurdles? Is there anything that they list or write in their report that overcomes the hurdles that we have seen?
No, I don't think so. Sophia,
I would agree.
do you see anything? No. Pansy,
No.
how about you?
No.
No. Nobody's seeing anything in the documents that would back up their theory. What they're
And
saying.
that then goes to there's the big question. Then we must ask, as John Q. Public, why? Why? And this goes more not to not knowing the facts, but turning a blind eye for what reason? Because this is what it appears to me. They're turning away from the truth to come up with a conclusion that is obviously not supported by facts. And that leads to the other question. Why are they doing it that way? And who is compelling them to publicly support this kind of nonsense? That's the questions that come up in my mind. Because this obviously has a basis of reasoning from their perspective to turn the case over like this, like the case in California. What was that case where the father and it killed his two children and the dog? I forgot the name of that.
Philip Marshall.
Oh yeah, Philip Marshall. The same kind of issue comes up. People die. It appears to be suicide and murder, as with Philip Marshall. And then, however, there are some incongruent facts that don't fit the end conclusion, which this is seemingly something that's not just involved with Apple Valley, but maybe across the nation or across globally. So what we're touching here is something that might be more of not just a local issue, but a bigger issue based on David Crowley's involvement in his movie and what it was involved with and whom it was touching. Not comparing him to Epstein, but Epstein touched a lot of, let's just say, a big power base. And it did not surprise me that he ended up, he committed suicide in the most secure, the most regulated and secure prison there or jail in New York. And he was first put on, a watch, keep him committing suicide. Then they took him off the watch, and then he commits suicide. And I haven't heard the details. They just said he was found unresponsive. So I'm assuming he hung himself, which is the general method that you can do in prison. That's the only way. But if you are subject to that, then you don't get anything which you can use to commit suicide. But conveniently for a lot of people who are involved with Epstein, that case now goes civil versus public, in which there would have been trial and talking of different, people who were involved with the young women. And this case with David, likewise, may have touched, and my point being, may have touched on areas and people in his movie that he was going forward with very well. And it touched in areas that maybe somebody did not want him to go. And as I remember looking at that particular aspect, the Gray State really touched to me on a worldwide consortium of people that might have been interested in ending the propagation of his film.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
agree.
Go ahead. Okay. Yeah, I
And
really.
it's almost scary. It could happen in your community. If it happens there, it can happen anywhere.
Right. And when you look at the reach that David's film had, so I keep calling it a movie, but it was just a movie trailer. There was no movie ever made. But when you look at that trailer and you look at the reach and how that trailer resonated with so many people from so many different countries and has been translated in so many languages, to almost to the point where, well, you don't even really need that. It is scary. It is scary. And I think some people, especially back in 2012, were probably scared because there is a lot of truth to it. Because we have seen this stuff. They do that. Um, it happened later on, not where the police are kicking down doors, but during the Boston bombing, right after that, when they were looking for the two quote unquote suspects for the Boston bombing, um, they were, it was like a scene out of David's trailer. It really was, and so we are, we're seeing a lot of what David was writing about, a lot of the stuff that he was touching on. Personally, I'm seeing it in a different light now, and I'm still not a fan of the project. I'm not a fan of any of that, and definitely not a fan of anybody that he was working with. But I do see it differently now, and I do wonder what it would be like if he was still here fighting with us instead of 6 feet deep, or I guess not even 6 feet deep, because he's just ashes. That's all there is. So
Well, somebody wanted him out of the way. I think so. And I think the evidence at the house illustrates there was some type of struggle. And it,
definitely.
and he wouldn't, I don't think he would kill his daughter.
No.
I just don't think so. I have no doubt in my mind he would not do that to his daughter or his wife. Excuse me. And that begs to say, who was using the daughter and the wife as a tool? It seems like somebody was trying to convince him to do something that he would not do. And since he would not do it, they killed him. My opinion. And they killed him because he would not acquiesce to a demand that he stop whatever he was doing that was leading him in the direction of making that movie. And I think that was the basis for this killing. There must be a motive for a killing, and there must be a purpose, unless it's a random crazy person who has just lost his mind, which happens at times. But this looks like a calculated removal. And what shocked me was the fact that they didn't kill just him, they killed his daughter and his wife. So they were trying to send a message out, and I don't think it was just to him. I think there was something, people who do this in regards to something they're trying to prevent, like to send a message. And it's clearly elevated that message in the way that the local police handled it, and everybody that has gotten involved. They fall in line with the same turning a blind eye to the facts. And that means to me, there's somebody bigger in the picture that is controlling the information, in my opinion,
Hmm.
and that is more than likely telling them this is why it was done, stay out of it, stick to the script, which is what everybody has done. There is a script, I think, and that's what they're sticking to. And that means that it's not the local police that maybe even want to do it this way, but they're compelled to. And that's what I say makes it scary. This goes higher up and is more broad based than what we are seeing, obviously.
Absolutely.
I
I
believe
don't
it.
know. I don't know if anybody concurs with me on that, but that's how it looks from my perspective.
I believe it.
Well, it's not only the officials, but those of us who have actually dug deeper and have requested information or actually uh, made contact with people in regards to this case. Uh, I'm not talking about family and friends, people. I'm talking like the officials in regards to this case,
Okay.
making contact with them. Uh, we've had things happen in our personal lives because of that.
That does
Some
suggest
things,
something. Yes.
yeah, some things I'm willing to talk about publicly, and other things I'm not willing to talk about publicly.
I can understand. And it goes to support the fact, based on my observation, that there is a governing body somewhere in an official position that is monitoring this and keeping tabs on where information goes. And they want one thing: control of the data and the direction regarding David Crowley because they have a vested interest, and they may say it's national security, even, which is always a common moniker to cover up ops and things that they don't want known. National security. That's a coverall. And that's what makes me suspicious about this case. And as I have told Greg earlier, this smells like something much bigger and is probably even a small piece of a bigger puzzle that we do not have access to see. But there's a reason, like I say, the reason is the motive for them to do this. Whatever that reason is they think that this life was sacrificed, and an innocent daughter and woman, and David Crowley being innocent, they sacrificed them on the altar of, we could
Bohemian.
just say, a cremation of care,
Right.
if I may add that in there. Um, I think things like this kind of pass through California at times. Greg, you may know what I'm referring to in
Mhm.
the Monterio thing. I think these things come across through there in some aspects in very, very tight circles and in very, very closed rooms regarding things like national security, who's trouble, who's not, what do we need to move on, and what do we need to stay off of or watch and monitor. So it's a very big spectrum, but I think these little things like this illustrate that there is a controlling party involved that is constantly getting the info and getting the direct data that gives them the opportunity to act against certain people. Like one just spoke here, like there's been threats, there have been calls, there are people that are out there really saying, we don't want you talking about that. You never know what can happen. They always speak very lucidly and directly to our fears. And that's what I think happened to the Apple Valley Police Department. And anybody who gets involved in this and really starts tackling the people who were dealing with it, those things happen. And I'm prayerful for each one here that you be
Right.
protected. Truth is to
That's
be
right.
done. And that's what you got to do. You go for the truth and pray, one, for those who are involved in the covering of darkness, and realize they're people too, and they may be in fear for their lives also. And I always think on the other side of the coin. If I was covering something up, why would I do it? Well, generally it's a threat to your life, or even worse, those around you you love, you fear for them. And this definitely smells like a high operation cover up. For what reason? I think the motive tied to the movie, he was getting into things that was touching things that they were not keen on letting to be aired in the public. And he was somebody that was going to get it done. They knew David Crowley would get this done. Second of all, he was a Christian, a believer, which there are some that are naturally opposed to those who are of the faith. And especially since, like Greg or myself, I want to seek the truth and put it out there because we are to confront darkness and expose it. What do they want to do? They want to hide and conceal it. So that's the world we're dealing in. And I realize that each time I get on this, that I know my life could be in the mix. That if they don't like what I do, or they want to stop the investigation or stop queries, they can make it look like this: murder, suicide, or their best way, make it look like an accident.
Hmm.
There are books in the CIA and the NSA that strive to make things look like it's self inflicted, accidental, or other persons involved, meaning anybody but the government or who's actually doing the deed, and make the trails look obvious, as they tried to do with David Crowley, and blame the dog for it. The dog did it. He tore up things. Oh, he did that. And it just smells to high heaven to me, and it really reeks of lies and contemptuous cover up. And I still tie it to the movie, but there might have been more that David knew that was not revealed, or part of the movie even, that he did stumble on in making this movie. So I don't know what y'all think along those lines, but that's kind of what's been in the back of my mind concerning this case since it's been brought to my attention. And I've looked at some of the things that were encountered by those investigating, and how quickly, again, how quickly they closed this case and said murder suicide and move on.
Right.
I'm with
And
you
it's
on that
hard,
one.
and it's hard not to look at who surrounded him, because that was a nest of vipers right there.
Yep, that I saw. And there was a lot of, I think, avenues to cover up who really did this. And I think they were making use of it. Um, I don't know what the actual persons or who was involved in what they're trying to cover up, other than the fact they did not want it known. And
Mm.
David was surrounded by people that were not exactly his friends. And one of them could be complicit in his murder, if not duly and totally involved in it. So that's other aspects involved, because one of the things that the government likes to do is infiltrate, investigate, and then make a decision. They may have had somebody in there with David looking at this and going, oh, we got to cut this right now. I don't know that, but I suspect it.
Yeah, which is a very good assumption. I'm not sure. Is that the right word to use for that?
Yep.
I think so.
Not pointing fingers. I'm just saying it's a pretty good guess.
Yeah, and I'm not wanting to run with who it might be in there. Uh, it's it's kind of like the Kennedy assassination. They try to lead you
Mm-hmm.
everywhere but to the truth. And they follow, this seems, the same mantra. They put just 40,000 different directions it could be to cover up the way that it really is.
That's right. And I just want to say hi to the people who have joined us on the YouTube live chat room. I want to say hi to Kath and to Mallory and to everybody else. Really appreciate you all helping us keeping this case going. And like I said, again, we got, listeners, people who are looking at this case globally. This is a global case. So I definitely thank everybody who has helped out, everybody who is here joining us now. And I also want to welcome Christy. Christy is also joining us. Christy, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, thanks.
Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you good. Loud and clear.
Okay, good. Good.
So what's your view on all this? What are you thinking?
Well, I believe that all of this is possible. One thing that I've really been looking into and wondering about that has perplexed me is because I've been into all of this. It's funny that Kennedy was mentioned, because that's one of the things that is something that I really study a lot, and I just keep uncovering more and more and more stuff. And what I wonder about is if he knew something. I mean, I know that he wasn't really dug in deep when he was in the military, but I believe that he would have had to have known something, or really been a threat on some huge level, because there are so many documentaries out there that you can find that are about these secret societies. I don't know if we should name any specific ones, but it really doesn't matter, because like I messaged you, Greg, and told you I was like looking into all of this stuff, and I've been researching, and what I have come to the conclusion to believe is that they're all connected.
Absolutely.
And there are people that are members of more than one of the societies. And that's, and this goes all the way back to Kennedy. I mean, I was just reading about someone last night that I had never heard of. A woman, what was her name? There was a Christine Keeler, and then there was another woman that was involved, and she was not only a double agent, she was like a triple agent. But she had dealings with the Kennedys, and I can't remember the guy's name that got all of the women for all of the politicians and stuff like that back then. But her name was her last name was Novotny. And let me look and see. She, and a lot of people don't know about this because a lot of this went on over in England, even though they had a very strong presence in Washington. But bear with me. I'm trying to find her name so that I don't want to say anything inaccurate. Her name was Mariella Novotny, and she was married to a man named Horace Dibben. And she originally was from Czechoslovakia, and she was the queen of, I mean, I'm just going to say it, and I'm not meaning to be inappropriate, but she was the queen of, like, sex parties. And Stephen Ward, and all of this is out there because of the Freedom of Information Act. You can find all of this. All of this stuff has come to light because they keep releasing more and more and more papers. And Stephen Ward was the guy that worked, and he got Kennedy and all of the other guys women, and he dealt with this woman. Well, not only was she the queen of the sex parties that they had, she worked for MI5 and the Mossad. She had numerous connections. Well, she started talking about writing a book in 1980, and she said that the CIA had her journal, and this was going to really be dynamite. Well, in 1983, she was found dead from a drug overdose, supposedly a suicide. Does that sound familiar?
No, I've never heard of this one. I'm trying to look it up now. I'm actually looking.
It sounds a lot like Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, Dr. Feelgood. Yeah.
Okay.
Or what about that Hollywood Madam too, or something?
Yeah.
Where she was going to write a book and have that black book and everything, and
exactly.
dead.
Yeah. But I'm not trying to digress. My point is that this goes way back, and they were members of these societies and stuff. And it's really funny because Kennedy actually made a speech about how things shouldn't be secret and whatnot. I'll try and find that speech where he talks about everything should be out in the open and there should be no secrets and stuff like that. And it just made me laugh because they were all dug into these societies. And so it goes all the way back into the 1800s, if not before that. And
Right.
it just goes on and on and on. And so basically my point is there are all kinds of things out there. There's documentaries about each and every one of these organizations and people secretly going in and filming them during ceremonies, and then you've got like major motion pictures that allude to things like Tom Hanks, and I'm not going to name any specific things because I don't want to be accused of saying that anyone's accusing anyone of anything, but there's a Tom Hanks movie that alludes to certain things, and so there's even major motion pictures that allude to things people getting killed for going places where they shouldn't go. So I'm really, because I'm not ruling that out. I mean, that's a strong possibility, but what I'm wondering is, why was he so dangerous for them to do this to him? Because there's so many people out there that are so vocal about this. I mean, you've got the 9/11 people, you've got all kinds of people out there, and why him? That's what I'm trying to figure out. That's what I'm trying to, and it's so hard because we're limited to the information that we have, and so it's really hard to figure out.
You're right.
One of the things that I noted. Well, one of the things I noted about Kennedy, I want to interject here, is that I have looked up, is that there were two things that Kennedy was finding that he did not like. One, the Federal Reserve was not constitutional. He was going to do away with it. Two, the CIA, he said he was going to tear up and scatter into 1,000 pieces. Two things that I think had great input to what happened. Plus, at the time, our government was looking at him as being too cozy with Russia. And one of the things that's ironic with Kennedy is his family was tied in the war with the Bushes and everything in the past, and involved in some of these secret societies. And I think he and his brother, Bobby, disagreed with that. And we're going a new direction. And I think that's why, as you both see, both of them were executed.
And there's a lot of symbolism. What's really interesting is there's a lot of symbolism with his death. I'll post this one documentary that I watched, and I'll send. I mean, if anyone wants any of the information that I've come over, on the internet and stuff, feel free to message me and ask me for it, and I'll send it to you. But it's really interesting, the symbolic things that come into play just with his assassination. And like you said, his connection to Russia, that had a huge thing to do with it. And, there was no love lost between him and people in the CIA, or even between him and Johnson. The only reason they were still around is because of the dirt that they had on people. They had so much dirt on people, they didn't know how to get rid of these people, because they would just keep gathering up all of this information, and they had so much information about the Kennedys and their extracurricular activities and stuff.
Absolutely.
They couldn't just say, okay, let's get them out of here. He couldn't do that. And so, but there's a connection with Giacomo, the mobster. There's a real strong line. You can follow it, because Giacomo was a mobster. He was associated, and their dad had strong connections with the mob, because he started out bootlegging. And so you can follow the line, and what's really interesting is you can follow the line of all of the deaths, because Giacomo was connected with Ruby. And Ruby assassinated Oswald.
Who had no involvement with Kennedy.
And Oswald supposedly had connections with Russia, but they just killed Oswald so they couldn't prove that he didn't kill Kennedy, is the only reason he did it. But, I mean, I'm kind of getting off of the point. But the point is if you know too much, they're going to get rid of you. If you know something and they don't like it, they're going to get rid of you. But that's the $1 million question.
What did Crowley know?
Exactly. He had to have known something for him to be so dangerous to kill him and his family.
And
He
the
would
thing
have
about
had
it,
to know something.
and the thing about it is, he wasn't working on his film at the time, was he, Greg?
They were
When he was
working.
killed, he had not been working on it for a while.
No, he was working on it. He was working on it up until the day he died. So he was working on making a
I
treatment
mean,
for a TV series. Go ahead.
I know that, but what was he working on the movie effectively at the time he was killed,
Well,
or
by
was he
that
offline for a while?
he I don't know if he was offline. That's a really good question because it kind of goes back to when did he actually die? Because there if you really look at it, the people he was working with to turn Gray State into a TV series had not heard from him since September.
Whoa!
That's a long time. Now maybe that I might be
That,
off by 1 month, but even that is they were
that's a couple
trying
of
to
that's
contact him.
2 to 3 months.
Yeah, it's a
Huh?
that's a long time. So when we started going back and really thinking about, okay, who saw David win? Who were some of the last people to actually see him? It kind of brings that up. But in September is when the Gray State moved from a movie. They were going to make it a TV series, and David publicly put that out on Facebook. So everybody knew it. Everybody who was hoping that this would be a film, a feature film. Now the whole plan changes. Now it's not going to be a feature film. It's going to be a TV series, which may lead into a feature film later on. But that's what David was supposed to be doing at this time, was working on a treatment that would help with this TV series. So he's basically working, which this is normal for him when he gets into that mode where he's writing. So and then all of a sudden he turns up dead.
Oh, so he was starting to write the scripts for his series
Correct.
that he was wanting to put on TV.
Right.
Did they find those scripts?
That's a really good question. I would assume yes. I think they found everything that was in that house. Everything that he was doing, everything that he was actually working on. Uh, they had it all. I think it all, after everything was said and done, I think it went back to David's dad, and from there, the Gray State team got their grubby little hands on it and are still trying to do something with it. That's what I think. They're still trying to make money off of this.
Oh, based on what happened to David, they better take note. Because honestly, if they were to actually get that going, it may not bode well for them if they're really trying to follow up. Because, like I say, I hope it does come out and they get it on the air. I'd like to watch it, to be honest. I really would.
But it won't be
But
his movie. It won't be
it
his
won't be
vision.
his
That's the
idea,
problem.
nor it will not have the information that he had.
No, it
Because
won't.
I think the reason he was killed is because he knew something. He may have been holding back on it even a little bit for his own good and his family, maybe. I don't know. Uh,
It sounds like he was going to take this in a more spiritual. There was going to be a lot more spiritual stuff to it, and a lot of the people that David was actually working with were not
didn't like
Christians.
that.
They did not
Yeah,
like Christ. They were almost, I mean, obviously you could say, well, if you're not of Christ, you are antichrist. So by that
yeah, that's
by
true.
that way you could pretty much say that. But these were not people who wanted to take it in that way. They didn't want it to go in that spiritual. They really just wanted to keep it just a Hollywood blockbuster, true to the
Hard
to
facts,
right,
true facts
true to
type of
that
thing.
trailer, to the 2012 trailer.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
that's totally what I took from the trailer with the mark that they were putting on people's arms and them not being able. Obviously, the woman goes into the grocery store. She's not able to buy anything because she doesn't have the triangle on her arm, and then the guillotine.
Oh,
You can't get any more.
oh. This
Um,
was dealing with the mark of the beast, and the gray state was dealing with that Interesting.
Well, he didn't completely say it, but I find it weird that he chose a triangle because and this is just what I believe, it's a personal belief, but like anything demonic a lot of times likes to deal in threes because it's mocking God, and a triangle is three-sided. But another thing that's interesting is some triangles can have 6 sides. And so, I found it really interesting that a triangle was involved. Also, the all-seeing eye, which is associated with many, many, many groups. But then the guillotine and the decapitation I was like, okay, I see what direction this is taking, and so that may be the answer to the $1 million question, Greg.
Yeah.
Or also, nobody has mentioned it, but I do think it. The Star of David. Think about it. They have 3 triangles or 3 on top and 3 on bottom, which is their national emblem. Which, if you count the points on each triangle, there's 3, right? Or there's 3 at top, 3 at bottom, 6 points to that star.
Yeah, and if you just turn that star a little bit, then you've got the satanic star.
And the interesting thing about this is that they're talking about their coming Messiah rejecting the true Messiah. So therefore, having 2 Star of Davids as a mark could be quite interesting. Or 3 stars, for example, given as the mark, the threefold cord, and the number 3 also being involved in that. Indicates a possibility of a mark imitating or being close to that. Which I think is keeping with the last days where the true Israel and the 144,000 come at odds against those who have these, what they consider to be the true Israel, based on the law, which cannot save, and those basing and boasting in the Savior about salvation apart from the law by grace through faith.
Yeah.
Which is what is shaking up.
What's interesting is the fact that this case has taken an international interest. It's just a family in Apple Valley, Minnesota, and yet it's gone
small little town in Minnesota.
So, that says a lot, there's got to be a reason.
Absolutely.
There's got to be a reason.
It's the Spirit of the Most High highlighting the darkness involved and going, this, like John the Baptist crying out to Herod saying, you're wrong. You shouldn't have your brother's wife. You're wrong. And the same thing to Apple Valley in there. This is wrong. And light is being put upon it.
Exactly.
Amen.
Exactly.
Amen.
I don't think if there wasn't something to it, it wouldn't have spread the way that it has spread. But I think it's something that's very significant, and I think that's why it's grabbed a hold of so many people, because it has a major significance. I don't think that any of us really even know yet, but there's something extremely significant about it. And I think as it unravels, it'll be revealed to us more and more.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
Because the way it's looking right now, this is buried deep. And what else do you have on that document, Greg, that you were reading?
What else?
We
Yeah,
got a
There's
lot.
like
there's
488
488 pages.
pages.
You were reading the page though.
That's
I mean,
right.
you were reading the page there. I know. There's 488,
Yes,
but
there
you weren't
are.
reading specific that
We've
you were trying to highlight.
no, it's cool. I mean, we've managed to get through about 56, 57 pages so far. So, and we kind of
And
skipped
you're trying
through.
to march through all
Well,
488. That's going to
yeah.
be fun.
Well, and that's this is going to be a long series, right? But these calls are obviously not just limited to that talk, but
Yeah,
that's just kind of if the radio goes silent, because Walter, you can't have radio silence. That's a big no-no.
that's a fact. I remember that at Family Radio. We did not. We gave maybe a second. They gave long radio silence in there a couple of times. I
Oh
remember at
yeah,
break, but they tried to
yeah.
keep it tight. But I remember 1 or 2 seconds, and I thought, "Oh, that's horrible."
Oh,
My dad
Craig
used to
would.
say he hated that.
Yeah, Craig would drill us on that. Like, yeah, like what are you guys doing? It's like you don't realize how
Don't put a great
complicated it
paper.
is.
It is.
It really
It
is.
is
Um,
definitely.
So I know we got also Mallory. I think Mallory has joined us. I don't know if she's back on now here, but Mallory's going to be joining us.
Hi.
Hey, Mallory. How are you?
Yeah, I hear you.
All right,
I'm
we hear you.
great.
Welcome.
And
Thank you so
contribute.
much.
We don't want to talk too much. We're trying to fill the void, but we like the others to screech and holler at us
Absolutely.
and start talking.
Absolutely. Give us your views. Tell us what you think about this case. Let me ask you, Mallory, what brought you to this case here?
Actually, I had been on some deep dive looking up like stuff and video where they were portraying him as guilty, and then in the recommended, there was like one of Catherine Michelle's videos, and that's where it all started.
Nice.
And I realized he's completely innocent, and this is like one of my favorite cases,
Have
to study.
Have you
Yeah,
watched
go ahead, what?
Have you watched Eric Nelson's documentary?
Let me check. I don't know. Let me.
You would know. You would definitely know if you did.
Yeah, you would know.
You would know.
Watch that piece of crap.
It is on YouTube. You can find it. It's on Netflix, but it is on YouTube. You can find it there too. So it's definitely. I guess it's worth watching once. I've only watched it once myself, but
Bring a bottle of wine.
bring two.
It'll help.
Yeah.
Yeah, too.
Hey, just bring a bunch of
Research
Gallo
this
wine.
case.
Bring a case, right, Walter?
Yeah, there you go. Get 2 buck chuck.
2
Sit
bucks.
back with it.
You might need the good stuff for this one. I don't know. 2 buck Chuck's gonna
Oh,
cut
yeah,
it.
we had some good stuff we bought at our nice little winery down on Palo Verde out there.
Absolutely. Support your local winery.
Oh yeah, we did that quite a few
For-
times.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been going there
Yeah,
a
just-
lot since I've been researching this case. So what does that tell
Oh,
you?
that's a good place to sit out. What was the name of that one? Started with C. I forgot. The name.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's not let's not
Let's not
advertise.
advertise.
Let's not
Oh
advertise
yeah,
that.
I had it in my mind. I thought I'm not gonna do it.
That's okay. Sorry,
What's the
Mallory.
name of this documentary?
It's called A
A
Gray
Gray
State. Mhm.
Oh, okay.
But once you
Yeah,
have
I don't know.
researched this case, it is very, very hard to watch that documentary.
You're right. That's
so
right.
you're forewarned.
There's no going back after that.
Oh, this
Yeah,
is probably
once you
gonna
watch
bug
it-
me then.
It is gonna
If
bug
you
you.
watch
Yeah.
it, it's there.
Yeah, it's about 93 minutes long. Definitely worth watching. But you
Yeah,
know.
I think I see it 124, or I mean 1 hour 24 minutes.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
And nobody will blame you if you break that up into like a week's worth
You might have to.
of watching
Right.
it. You know, just watch 5 minutes, stop, take a few hours, go back to it again.
Yeah, walk away, come
Walk
back the next day.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
It is a lot to take in. Though.
Basically,
It is.
It's to me that's intense. To me, this case has affected me in a lot of ways. In thinking about our local police departments, it makes me
aw.
wonder what they're all about sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, because all police departments are somewhat interconnected to some degree. Apple Valley could be Waco, Texas, where I live and exist. And the police out here are a lot more authoritarian, definitely. And people here respect the police, and we all should respect them. But we should also call out their errors and expect correction too.
There's plenty of errors here.
Oh yeah.
Well, if some other police
Errors,
them
I don't
out,
know if
then,
they're errors. I think they're contemplated
Right.
actions. Definitely.
Go ahead, Mallory. You were saying some other police?
Go ahead.
Oh shoot, yeah. If some other police called them out, I don't know what they would. Since we're all just like the regular people, they don't have. I mean, they have power to just reject what we're saying, but like, I don't know. I wish that they were like better policemen in the system, or that other policemen just took their power from them and investigated for themselves. Like,
Well, I guess that's
it irks
the
me.
yeah, that's the difference between the county sheriff that they have there, and then the Apple Valley. It's kind of a um, I've always kind of hoped that the sheriff's office, the Dakota County Sheriff's Office, I always thought that they might be more of a big help if we can give them something. And it's kind of like, there nobody is going to move, nobody's going to budge unless we can give them something. And Catherine tried. That doesn't mean that we should
Oh, she
stop
tried
trying.
hard.
Yeah, she really did. She really did. And we got to keep on trying because, we could lose every battle here, but we can win this war and we can get this case reopened. I have no doubt. No doubt at all. It's just a matter of time.
One
Yeah, 'cause
thing
there's-
that oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, because this one little bitty group of police officers is telling us all in like the country that we're wrong and they're right. We can totally take them down and win this. You're right.
Well,
What were you saying though?
one thing that found really interesting when I started thinking that this runs a lot deeper is because of the results that the private investigator gave. Because it was so
Comical.
it was
Comical.
copied down
What did he
just
come up with?
what was in the police report. I mean, he just basically regurgitated what the Apple Valley Police Department had said.
Yeah.
Oh, they gave him the
And-
script.
Yeah, and the thing is, and here's my other question, especially if anyone is listening, if people want us to go away and shut up about this, if there is proof in the diaries that he did this, then just show it. Show the proof that he did it. We are reasonable, intelligent people. We aren't crazy kooks. We are rational. We're intelligent. We're not just trying to chase this just for the sake of chasing it. I mean, I don't spend hours and hours and hours of my days going over this because I enjoy it. It's horrible. So if there is proof in those diaries they did it, then just show it and we'll shut up and we'll go away.
Amen.
I think if they would have had that, they would have done it. And the only way that'll
Mhm.
come out that way and they show it is because they concocted it and wrote it themselves.
There
they
you
were
go.
they were
Thank you.
looking. They were looking for everything. So if there was something like that, they would have found it and they would have used it. For sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I think if they do come
It's
up with something
unfortunate.
later, don't believe it.
Yeah, right. But they wanted to cover up, and they just wanted to go with what they had and not. And just in the case right there, We're not happy with that, though.
I'm sure they didn't
Another-
expect this backlash at all, but that's why they're holding the fort. There's a lot of people probing them, and they don't like that. And there's, like I said, there's somebody holding them accountable to stay, on script. But
Oh, yeah.
this is a big deal. And this is going, like I say, larger than just Apple Valley. Something that David Crowley had or knew, or he was getting close to and was about to find out. And they just said no. And then they told everybody, shut up, call it a murder suicide. Let's make it look like that, and let's leave it alone and let them talk.
And the other
As
interesting
much as I
thing
hate
is
to think like that.
all of a sudden, the private investigator that was hired to look into this case, $7,000 was spent for him to tell information that we already have. Now he has a television show coming out.
Wow.
Wow, that's interesting.
Oh, so that's a new TV show. That's not a old.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a new. I thought it was an old.
No, this is new.
Ah,
I
didn't
think
know
he's
that.
going to replace Kenny.
Yeah, it seems like everybody knows about Kenner except me.
Hollywood, Hollywood.
Wow.
Like how Crowley was going to get a TV show, but then conveniently died.
Yeah. There you go.
Funny.
Yeah, but he didn't follow a script. If you follow a
Right.
script, you get a TV show.
You guys are on point. That's so on point.
The rewritten script.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's right on point there. Interesting.
Because Hollywood is run not by ethical people, we could say that.
I mean,
No,
even
especially when you've got people holding their hands up in a triangle shape when they
Oh, yeah.
entertain. You have to be a moron.
Or putting out the all-seeing eye 666 over their eye, yeah.
well, I mean, David.
Kind of understood what that means, and I think that ties back to where it is in California and the Monte Rio, the river of money, and that shows their power and their constituency, and it's worldwide, because everybody worldwide goes to California, everybody. And it's interesting to me that one little town that has 1,900 people, and I went through that town, and it looks like a town of impeccable cleanliness, almost perfection. And it scared me to walk through a town. I've never seen a town quite like it. And then, of course, the Bohemian Club and the grove there that the ancient Indians used to say, don't go there, evil lurks there. And then that's where their club meets and hangs out for 3 weeks. I go, if you're hanging out in the midst of the woods that the ancients said is an evil place, what's coming out of there? Evil.
It's a who's who of the elite.
You've got it. Not only that, but of world powers and politicians and all of the businesses and everybody who's anybody. And you don't get in unless you're invited, and you can be invited as a guest or invited as a member. And I think Greg said the dues are $100,000 a year, and you got hundreds of members probably. So their budget is quite, good. So they can accomplish things. And the thing about it, what's interesting, that means it's a worldwide consortium that is continuing to work at a goal to do what? So this has a purpose. And I think it ties in to this David Crowley case.
They're expanding too. Did you hear that?
No, I haven't.
They're cutting trees down so that they can expand.
Oh boy, they're buying up. Oh boy.
Yep.
Greg, I think we should go there at the end of their time when everybody's coming out and see what's going on.
Yep, you're right. And we definitely.
Yep.
They're expecting us in.
You're right.
Someone got their hands on a yearbook from it and a list of members.
Yeah.
There's a documentary.
Wow.
Yep.
There's a documentary. I don't know how they got their hands on it, but they did.
Their lives are at stake grabbing that thing.
But that's my point. That's my whole point. That's what I'm saying. So this person goes and makes a documentary and shows that they have a yearbook and they have a list of people, and they start naming off names that are on the list. They're not dead. David Crowley and his family is dead. So what did he know?
He might have run across something that they were planning that was an intricate part of a worldwide effort, because he was dealing with that. And the thing about it, it was dealing with international governments and maybe how they work together instead of how they are apart. Because in the news media, it's Russia against the United States, Russia against China, and all of this. But I think behind the scenes, that is not really what is happening. And they decide, okay, we need to go to war to we need to trim our troops and get rid of some people. We got too many. What do y'all say we do? Can we start a conflict? And that's kind of how I think it goes. They sit there and talk it out.
Exactly. Well, a certain group that has been around forever, they started doing the same type of stuff in Germany right before all of that broke out, and they did exactly what is going on here. They're dividing and conquering. What they're doing is they're dividing the public.
Yep.
And when you divide the public can't be united to fight against anything. And it's kind of like a sleight of hand. It's like, okay, we're going to make them fight against each other, and then we're going to move in. And that's when all of the stuff that Crowley was talking about, that's when all of that stuff will come into play. It's going to get so out of hand. People are going to get so riled up and agitated because they don't realize that they're pawns in this.
Yep.
And it's going to get so out of hand that they are able to declare martial law.
Yeah, they don't want the people unified, and maybe through grace, the grace state, it would have started waking people up to an area that they did not want.
Exactly.
That type of unity would make it dangerous, and it could spread, just like the Trump phenomena.
Right. Exactly.
Well, the key actor in Gray State, he went on numerous interviews with David saying that he helped David write, part of the script and everything, and a lot of these ideas came from him. And you'll see in the trailer that the executioner is wearing like this Masonic apron.
Yep.
Well, guess who became a member of the Masons after David's death?
Oh, wow.
Danny Mason.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And I was just telling Greg, the biggest Masonic lodge nearly in the world is no. You know where it's really located? You're not going to believe it. I didn't either. Waco, Texas.
Oh, wow.
And guess where Kennedy was killed? In Texas. And I thought, now that's quite a coincidence. Because I noticed the Masonic library. They have a huge Masonic library. I took some pictures and sent to Greg. And I haven't passed a lodge here, but I was just looking up the lodge here because I always look it up wherever I go. And I'm from Waco, and I never knew. And they said the biggest lodge, nearly worldwide, is the lodge in Waco, Texas. And I was going, what? Waco has a population of about 100,000. Central Texas is not the who's who in the world, and it's a quiet little backwood country town. Very nice, but if you come to Waco, you'll notice it's not great, it's not big, it's not flamboyant, it's just a quiet little place. And I was stunned. I go, the biggest Masonic lodge is in Waco, Texas? I'd expect someplace like Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, New York City, something like that. But it is located in Waco, Texas. And by this, I understand that Waco and the surrounding, even in a little town called McGregor, they had a Masonic lodge there, a real small one. And I'm thinking, my gosh, my state is the biggest Mason state around, one of the most powerful ones. in my opinion, based on what I just learned about Waco, Texas. And I thought, wait a minute. The Masons are, of course, tied to, I bet you a lot of them are members of the Bohemian Grove. If they are invited to be so, they would choose one of those people. And so that stunned me. And when I thought about Kennedy being killed in Texas, and now tying this to Crowley, you mentioned the Mason there. So I think this is just coming to me now. Maybe the Masons had the ears on David Crowley and his group for whatever reason, and were monitoring it and reporting to whomever they would report to. The head Mason, and if y'all are aware of it, is, guess who? Y'all know who that is, right?
No.
Who? Y'all don't know? It's the Scottish
The Queen?
Rite. Ah, you are correct.
What the devil?
Queen Elizabeth is the head of Masonry.
Wait, but she's a woman.
Yeah, they
Woman.
made it.
She
They made an
is the
exception.
head.
They made an exception. Wow.
Oh, yeah, they did make an exception.
You know,
But she's the head Mason.
since you mentioned that, because you mentioned Kennedy and the Masons and everything, do you know what the FBI headquarters, what building it was located in when he got shot there in Dallas?
Now, I haven't seen that.
It was an old Masonic lodge.
Exactly. Makes sense.
Wait, which was an old Masonic lodge?
The FBI headquarters in Dallas when Kennedy got shot.
That makes total sense. And I bet you a lot of agents are Masons too. Believe it or
It
not.
runs deep. I'm telling you, it runs really,
It
really
does.
deep. If you start getting into this, it'll drive you insane. But if you start with that and start dissecting stuff, it runs so deep and it goes so far back. I mean, it goes back before you can even even recorded. I think it's just.
You know, all the rabbit holes lead to one place though.
Mhm.
The Warren and the hold of all the rabbits and all the rabbit holes goes to Monterey. Believe it or not.
I can believe it. I can believe it.
Why I say that, I'll tell you why. Because every world leader, every known power broker and business leader, and some great movie stars, you can remember Reagan, and everybody of power is part of the Union City Square there in California, the Bohemian Club. And I'm talking about Putin. You can mention anybody, and that they all come together yearly, everybody. And if they don't go there personally, I think they remote in, or they get information, or one of their proxies in, to get the information and to get their agenda and their view of what must happen next in the world, so to speak. And you've noticed the guns and shootings in Texas are going crazy now. Shootings in Texas.
Are you saying they collectively? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, are you saying they collectively turned a cheek to the Crowley case?
Well, I think that it ties to the Crowley case to some degree, because Crowley was doing something, and if there was a Mason involved, that means it got to members and to those who are interested, even back to the Grove. And I think they discuss these things here and go, what about this Crowley thing? What do we want to do about this? What is he doing? What's coming up? And I think that due to their fingers being everywhere, Masons are everywhere. And I was shocked at, hearing the largest Masonic lodge was in Podunk Town, Waco, Texas. And that means they like to hide in plain sight, but they don't want to go to just the big cities and everything. They want to be in areas where they're not going to really be noticed, or
overpowered.
Nobody in Waco, Texas, that's the Masonics. Oh my gosh, There's nothing. Nobody protests at a Masonic lodge. Nobody's ever,
There's
you
never
know,
any shootings. You never see a shooting, a mass shooting or anything like that ever involved with Masons, have you?
no,
I'm gonna
no,
tell you something.
no,
You
not
got
around a
family
Masonic
members out.
lodge.
Go ahead, Pansy.
You've got family members out there that's probably members of it too, because
You're
I've
right.
got them, and I don't.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You're right.
I'm afraid my brother might be a part of that because he was a successful businessman, and he's in Dallas now, and he just has the, I mean, the attitude. You know, each person who's a Mason is generally successful business wise. And have you ever met the businessman that's just super confident and always seems to be right and
Yes.
always goes well?
Yes.
That's
I
what
think
my
we
brother
worked with
is.
one of those guys. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's
My family
scary.
member happens to be a minister.
Yeah, they're ministers, and
Everybody.
once
Yeah.
they get past that 33rd degree, there's a
Right on.
knowledge there that they have.
But there's so many Masons that have never even heard of that, and they've been in it for a long time, and you ask them about the 33rd degree, and they're like, I have no idea, never heard of that. It's never...
Well, they would be told to be
You
do that
have to
too.
work.
Go ahead.
You have to work your way up there.
Well, and
You
that's
have-
when they find. That's when they find out when they do, like, you know, the cornerstone ceremonies. You know, they're supposedly worshiping God, but there's a reason why they have, like, the star Sirius that goes back to Egyptian times when the Egyptians worshipped Sirius, and there is a strong I mean, they haven't been able to actually prove it, but they believe because of all of the corn and everything
Hmm.
that it's actually Baal,
Yep.
which was in the Bible, and Baal is demonic, and a lot
They did
of
sacrifice to him too.
and
Yep.
and you know, and he was like the god of corn, and and I mean, and Baal is actually in the Bible, and the thing is you know, they don't find out until they get way up there what that is, and then that's when you start looking at the stars, which look so similar to pentagrams and things like that, and all of the symbolism, and why certain Mason lodges have to face certain directions and things like that, and why is the Washington Monument where it is. I mean, it's all connected. The Washington Monument is where it is because it's in line with Sirius.
And it goes to the east, and they'll always say they're going east.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly.
The
And
Eastern
that's how
Star.
their lodges face. Yeah, and the thing about it is that's if they're wanting to clue somebody in, an officer, that they're a Mason, they'll say, all right, I notice you're going 45 and a 32. What's wrong? Well, I was just heading east, officer. That would be a little clue to that officer. I'm a Mason, and I'm doing some business. And if that officer's a Mason, he'll go, okay, I'll give you a warning. They won't give them a ticket and won't write them up. They
So
also
do you
put them
think- Do you think that possibly someone was bribed to do this, and it wasn't actually, because I mean, the thing is this it doesn't. I mean, what's weird to me is it's not clean. I mean, it's
Yeah.
shoddy. It's a horribly shoddy job for
Right.
it to be someone taking someone out.
It wasn't
So-
professional, in other words. Yeah, I got your
So,
point.
so did they bribe someone to do this, or were there multiple motives involved in this? Were there numerous motives? That's what I'm wondering. If there's more than one thing in play, that's what I keep going to. I keep thinking that there's no way it's just one thing. There's multiple things in play because I can't rule out so much stuff.
Plus the fact that he killed, that his wife and his daughter were killed. When you're trying to take somebody out that's doing stuff that you don't like, you get rid of them.
Yeah, they just
But-
disappear like Jimmy Hoffa did.
Right. And
Right.
but then the wife must have known something. But then the little girl being, that
That's
sickened
messed
me.
up.
A
Right.
child being killed means they were trying to, you know, impress upon him the seriousness, I think. And I'm sure that tore him up, and I'm sure it angered him and made him want to just tear them up. And then his wife, I think she knew something based on David probably sharing with her his purview and work that he was doing. And so they just
But
got rid of them all. Um,
or
and
or
just to make him
Kamal,
suffer, I think they killed the daughter.
if they had left Kamal alive or Rania alive, then they would have owned the rights to the Gray State franchise.
That's true.
That's right.
They would
The
have.
And who did it
level
go
of
to?
hate directed at
Who's that?
Kamal. What?
Who's that? You're new. Who's speaking? Wait,
This
I'm
is
confused.
Sophia.
Oh,
I've been
hi.
on this call. Hi. The level of hate directed at Kamal was just outrageous. And it was overkill in regards to her. And then when you look at the scene is just, you just get this feel of pure evil from it. Chaos, overstaging. There had to have been more than one person doing this.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I've
And
always
I think
doing research
I
on.
think they were made to watch things happen. I think that definitely there was some form of torture involved.
Oh, definitely.
I would agree, and it was directed at David. And the reason I think his wife was so horribly hit and his child killed was they were making him suffer for what they saw
Yeah.
as an egregious
Right.
affront to them.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
They
And they
punished
wanted
him.
him to break. They wanted to destroy him emotionally, mentally, and then finally physically.
Well, why they destroyed his right hand or whatever was to keep him or so he didn't need to be writing anymore, and he wasn't going to be writing anymore.
And I think that was also a testimony or a warning to people. And maybe the police understood it because I think that made an impression upon. I would disgust, sicken me, and make me wonder immediately. If I'm a police officer, I go, the right hand cut off. Oh, the right hand is considered the right way to do things, the good way. And he was a Christian, and to cut off the right hand means we have cut you off. We have destroyed your family in front of your face. Where is your God?
Well, I want to
Where
be
is
clear. No, I don't think there's any proof that the right hand was cut off.
That's what now wasn't
I
that
want to be
what
clear
was
about that. It was
okay?
missing, and it might have been cut off and then, scavenged or something like that, but I don't believe there's any evidence that shows that the right hand was cut off. And that's just my view, and I could be wrong. I don't know anything about that. I don't
But
know
his right
anything.
hand was missing.
His right hand was
Then.
missing.
Oh, that is
What-
even more.
Detached.
What's
Detached.
even more perplexing, though, is his left hand being mummified
And how
and the
the
rest of
left
his
hand
body not being mummified. How did his hand get mummified
and
and
that
not the rest
hand.
of his body?
I think the way that his left hand is a satanic symbol. Maybe it's a coincidence, but the way that his left hand was found is very odd to me. Very odd.
I haven't even thought about that. That's
How
my
does a
God.
left hand mummify in such a short time? That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
Well, Rainey,
His whole body should have been mummified if his hand was.
Catherine
Rainey's
believes that
face-
his hands were tied.
and her
Go ahead,
her
Sophia.
face, her hand, and her feet also were partially mummified.
They were mummified too. That's right.
That means there was some
Mhm.
time that passed before in their death till they were found and mummification began. That means there was
Right.
some time. And Greg mentioned that they were not heard from for a couple of months, and that lends to say they may have been dead longer than um, assumed, based on the 2 week time frame of uh, the January and the December dates that were discussed, and seems to indicate they may have been killed much earlier
Then
what we
three
have
weeks.
heard.
Right. They've told us
But
3
their body,
weeks. Go ahead.
their bodies didn't show that kind of deterioration, though.
Yeah, they'd have to freeze them or something to preserve the bodies.
Something, yeah.
If
Something, yes.
Yeah, the house wasn't cold enough. The thermostat wasn't set cold enough to preserve their bodies to that extent. I mean, they would be almost liquefied
right.
to been around for a couple of months. They wouldn't have even been able to pick them up.
Because
That's why
that's
the
generally in a dry
mummification is.
atmosphere. It would have to be extremely dry and a controlled atmosphere to start mummification. Mummification
Mhm.
is generally going to come in a drier atmosphere. Because if you have moisture, you have bacteria, and bacteria liquefies the body, and then it drains into mush. Bacteria will consume it.
What? I was gonna say, did they freeze Crowley and leave his hand out the freezer or something? I don't know how it happened to mummify, and the rest of the body be fine.
Well, I don't know if the rest of the body was fine, right?
I mean, different. Oh no, it definitely wasn't fine. But I mean, completely different conditions.
Now, I hadn't heard of the mummification thing, and that intrigues me because that means they had to be in a dry area, and that might mean that where their bodies were found were not where they were originally when they died.
Well, that's what I believe.
I think they were moved in stage to that house, but they may have been killed out of the house and were in an area that could induce mummification, wherever that may have been. So that suggests the bodies were transported there to make it look like they were killed in that house. And then that means maybe that the shots fired in the house were just staging also. It could have been.
That's a big risk,
Well, yeah, I
though.
just thought to ask.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just thought to ask, where did that Camel's blood come from? Was her hand gone, or what? What happened?
Both of her hands.
I know that
Her, both, yes.
So it was her hand that was gone.
Yeah, both of her hands
And
were
she was
missing.
missing
I
most
did
of her
both of
neck
them.
and head too.
Say that again, Sophia?
She was missing most of her neck and her head too.
Oh my gosh.
See, I did some
Yeah.
research on bullets and the damage they did,
Mm-hmm.
and it was talking about the 40 millimeter was not nearly as explosive as the hollow point 40 millimeter, and that's what he had. Now, what would he be doing with 40 millimeter hollow points? Because they do severe damage once they enter your body, and I think that's what blew their heads off.
And if they're fractional bullets, meaning they fracture and
Fragmented.
they'll explode and just blow
Right,
out.
those will.
And
And they did find fragments.
That's
okay,
true.
then that means, oh wow, that means when you're shot, it will just blow out the neck or whatever they hit
Right.
and just drive out. Kennedy was hit with that type of bullet, and that's
Yeah.
what did him in. And oh wow, that's a sure death sentence if you get hit one of those in the head or neck.
That's
And
right.
Walter, there are 3 bullets with Camel's DNA on it.
Oh my. 3 bullets
So
with
that's
her
what I
DNA.
meant. Yes,
Mhm.
that's what I meant about extreme hatred being pointed at her.
Wow.
But no bullets with David's blood on it.
Correct. No blood or tissue.
Interesting.
And with
This
those
suggests-
type of bullets, there
Yeah.
would have been.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing about it is, this is sounding stranger and stranger. The fact I don't think they were killed in that house. The
I don't either.
mummification points to another place that was much drier and controlled before they went to the house. I'm beginning to think that they were staged in the house to look like it occurred in the house, and the missing hands and that suggests, oh, then they didn't bring the hands with them. They kept the hands. The dog ate them. They said the dog did this.
No.
And I don't believe that, because that would have been evident, because he didn't leave that house. If he ate the hands, there'd be a DNA trail, literally, from feces of that. And I didn't hear of anything of that. So it suggests to me they were killed somewhere else and brought to the house. In my
And they
opinion.
never talked. Well, they never talked about canine DNA whatsoever in the DNA results. They don't say anything about animal DNA. They just talk about other unknown persons.
Right.
But
Yeah.
And
Why?
the back door being ajar.
Why
That's why
blame
they-
the dog for so much, but not do any tests to prove it?
Yeah.
Right. Well, and the thing is, too, in order for mummification to occur, I mean, like the way the Egyptians did it, in order to mummify a body, the body is drained of all fluids, all of the organs are taken out so that the bacteria doesn't start that decomposition process. That's how mummification occurs. So my question is, I know we haven't seen all the pictures, and there probably is more blood in the pictures than we realize, but my question is there enough blood present there for mummification to occur?
well, I'll do you one
know
better.
You get what I'm saying?
Where's the decomp stains on the carpet? I
I didn't
believe
see that
there's
either.
one
There's
stain.
some- like you can see where Ranny was and where she was
Mhm.
moved.
Yeah.
You can see her decomp stain where her body was, and then they moved her. So there is some decomp stains there, and like that's how you can tell she was moved, because she's got decomp fluids on the back pant leg, but in pictures she's laying on her stomach. And so it's like, no, that's not right, because the fluid goes, it settles. So that's how you can tell she was moved.
Yeah.
But the thing
But when they flip
is,
that carpet up, you don't see it on the bottom of the carpet, is what I'm trying to say. And you would see it coming through. There's no blood coming through the carpet. There's no decomp fluid coming through the carpet. When they
I don't think
flipped it
the
up,
bodies were on the part where the carpet's lifted up. I think that part of the carpet was like further over next to the Christmas tree, past where David's body was where they rolled that up. But I may be mistaken. Greg, what you know more about the pictures?
No, that is right. No, that's right.
Greg, if you come up on 19 and 20 on the blood splatters, it shows imprints, just like that footprint. And that's nowhere near the footprint.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, okay. That was weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Where the carpet was actually lifted up is is closest to the south wall, so that's closest to the front window. And when we saw, there are a couple photos that I think Mason Hendricks took, and they show that whole area where those three bodies were, they cut that not the carpet, they cut the wood floor, but we don't have a good photo of the carpet under where those bodies were. And I don't think that they took one, because somehow there was a bullet, item 53, that rolled out of that carpet 2 days later, when the cleaning crew was taking that carpet out. So
And see, that's the
Rolled
problem,
out.
because there's speculation that there's blood going down the wall in the basement. So that's what I'm saying. The thing is we would have to know actually how much blood that was, because I mean, for three, I mean, I know Ronnie wasn't an adult, but for two adult bodies and a child's body, I mean, that's an awful lot of blood and fluid. You can't only say blood. You know, you've got to talk about fluid as well. So that's a lot of blood and fluid. And so, is there enough around, you know, via evidence, pictures, etc.?
So there was a basement where they were killed.
Mummified.
Right.
And we haven't received any pictures to show that.
So maybe this transfer was from the basement to the room they were found in.
Yeah,
That makes sense?
there are some basement photos that kind of look like what I thought was blood running down that basement wall. I don't know. I don't
That
know
would make
exactly.
sense, the fact of how they were found with the staging, and that they were tortured. And I think that's something that's indicated. I agree with one saying they were maybe had some torture involved, and the best place would have been the basement where no noise outwardly would have been heard.
Well, that's why.
Passersby.
Yeah, and that's why I still am not convinced that they left that house. There's plenty of room.
Now I'm convinced of it true. And I think they went in there one time, and whoever got them kept them there. I'm getting more and more in line with that.
Yeah, if you keep them in the
Well,
basement.
it bothers
but
me that they didn't spend that much time on the basement. That
No.
they were like, well,
right.
it doesn't look like anything went on down here, so we don't need to mess with the basement. I mean, you still investigate, even if there's not anything. I mean, you still need to be thorough. I mean, I would
Do the
think.
luminol test. Did they do
Yeah,
a luminol test
exactly.
down in the basement at all?
They didn't do
No.
anything in the basement. They actually one of the quotes here is that they did not find anything of significance as far as forensic. Page 108, forensic science. Nothing of forensic science in Ranya's room, bathroom, and basement. So
But it seems like they were moved in there, with limbs missing and everything. That basement might have been where they were killed and then brought up. 'Cause that would be
Which sink is it that looks like it has blood in it, Greg?
that's the master bedroom sink.
somebody
They
washing
didn't
off
touch
the blood.
that, did they?
I think if it was blood, I think they would have noted it. So I'm gonna kind of go with them that it wasn't blood, but
Okay.
I don't know. You know.
Some people assume that it might be hair dye because there was hair dye box in the trash,
okay.
or
That makes
it could have been cleaning out the bong, but none of them had pot in their system, so I don't know.
That's the weird thing too, because the weed is clearly out there, and yet when the tests come back, so it's like they had it, they were about to smoke it, but they hadn't smoked it yet. So that's kind of weird too.
And who's to say
Well-
that it was their weed, though? Maybe it was
Right?
whoever
Maybe it
was
was planted
perpetrating
there.
that was there and just left the weed.
Well, in the kitchen, looks like someone was doing the dishes, I mean, it looks like they had eaten and someone was in the process of doing the dishes, because the dishwasher is open. There's a
Right.
dirty pan on the stove. There's stuff left on the counter. So it looks like someone was caught in the middle of cleaning up from a meal. And yet, I don't think they didn't find any food in their stomachs. So that's weird to me, too.
Yep.
And Greg, didn't they find blood droplets on the dishwasher?
Yes, there's like
the
one or two.
door?
Yeah, there's one drop they found on the dishwasher drawer, and then one on the floor next to it. Those are the
So
ones
it's-
that they counted. There could have been more. The item 21 and 22.
Was that droplets or was that splatters? Meaning from an
Well,
impact like a bullet, or was
you
it
would
just
have to
drops?
look at I guess you'd have to look at these drops, and people on YouTube right now can actually see that, and you can kind of see there are one, two, three drops. So there are more drops than what they tested, but to me, they just look like like drops, like just
Somebody,
blood drop. I don't know. I
like
really
somebody
don't.
was standing there,
Yeah,
and
Standing
like it
drops
fell.
versus a bullet impact, which would
correct,
leave an oblong. And okay, all right,
correct.
all right.
But I mean, we could be wrong.
Yeah.
So those looking at the photos, feel free to let us know.
Yeah, and this is BCA 4881. So if anybody wants to look at that.
Hey, Greg, the blood spatter that doesn't look like high velocity blood spatter,
Mm-hmm.
how close is that to the floor?
In which area are we talking about? Give me an area.
Well, I know the living room has one because the wall is green, and there's some on the kitchen wall, or it's like the yellow colored wall, and the blood spatter doesn't look high velocity at all.
Right, correct. I totally agree with you on that. I don't see anything that's high. Medium,
Is it
low,
close?
yeah.
Mhm. I agree with the medium and the low. I don't see any high at all.
No, there's nobody standing
Is it
when
close?
they were shot. Is it close what?
Is it close down to the floor?
I think a lot of it is. I really do. I think a lot of whatever happened, people were on the floor and they were shot. They were killed. That's just, I mean, again, it's not to say that that's right, that that's what really happened or anything, but
Yeah, we're just trying to figure it out.
yeah, because again, I'm learning about all of this stuff that I have no business even looking into, but I want to know the answer, and I don't care if I'm wrong 200 times, just as long as I finally get it right, and that's all I want to do is figure out what really happened here. So I'm glad to have so many good people here chatting about this and walking me through this.
Get your man Kenneth Maines on the job, Greg. He did a real crack job on that breakdown.
What's up, Ross? How you doing?
What's up, man? How's it going, everybody?
How's it going?
Going good, man.
Your laugh
We're
is
listening for a
contagious.
couple of minutes here, so.
Cool. Yeah, tell us, man. Speak on it. Let us know.
Yeah, man. Now,
All of a
no,
sudden,
it's interesting.
Kenneth Maines is my boy. All of a sudden. All right. Okay. I got you. He could have been our boy. He could have been our boy.
Yeah, I
but,
know. I agree. Now, it's an interesting discussion you guys were having about the splatters. I'm definitely interested in that. But no, I think I was pretty disappointed in that report, as the rest of us were. It's unfortunate this guy got $7,000 to write a regurgitated email.
Yeah.
I could have did a deep dive into the case for that. So
Right?
pretty tough.
Can I hire you? Can I hire you next or what?
I mean, you can. I have no PI experience or anything
Well,
that
that's okay.
qualifies me in any way,
That's okay.
other than looking at it in an open mind. It's something that he didn't do. So
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
at least there's that. You know what I mean?
it couldn't be any worse. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. But I just want to commend Greg and Dan for all the research they've done. I've been following the case pretty long now. I don't remember how long ago that was when I came on with you guys. I think that I was like one of the first people to come on with you guys, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you were.
And I've pretty much just been following both you guys' channels since.
Now, for people that don't know, you actually spoke with David Crowley, and you donated to his cause, correct?
One more time? I missed that.
That's okay. I was saying you've actually spoken with David Crowley, and you have donated. You donated to his I think to the 2012 trailer, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I donated to the actual film. So that that trailer is a concept trailer, which is pretty common, you know, in the film realm for anybody trying to sell a concept or really any sort of film project. So that's kind of what they used for that pitch there. Yeah, so I donated that. I was supposed to get associate producer credit on the project, and yeah, pretty much followed it, you know, for quite some time. Took a little bit of time off after, you know, the bad news of what happened to the family there, and then kind of started getting back into the research via Dan and Greg's channels. But yeah, I actually spoke to David twice. So we had interviewed him over on my channel. I know you saw that, Greg. And then we had actually spoke to him one time previously before that, which was not, you know, recorded or posted or anything like that, briefly. Yeah, so that's my story.
Well, people can definitely find where you spoke with him publicly. Is that still out there?
Yeah, it is. It's on youtube.com/Planet X Records LLC. If you just search Planet X Radio or David Crowley or anything to that degree, has the date on there. I believe it was September 9th or something like that of 2012. So.
And you also
It's
and
not
you said
on YouTube though.
yes, it is. Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up right now.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let me Google this.
And you said you spoke with him privately too. Can you tell us anything about that, or not privately, but just not recorded? Was there anything interesting about your conversations with him? Anything you guys talked about, or did you want to just keep that private?
It was relatively brief, from what I remember. Granted, this is 2012 now, so you know, it's not like immediately fresh in my memory. But
right.
Yeah, he, my co-host, who's from the UK, that is on the interview which is posted, brought him on. We kind of just had a private call and kind of just ran by him, you know, how the interview would go and, you know, how our questions would be, things of that nature. I think we spoke briefly, you know, about the project. You know, most of those in-depth questions are on the recorded call.
Nice. Yeah, so people can check that out.
Could you put like the link? Oh, sorry. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to interrupt you.
No, it's
I
fine.
was just gonna ask if the dude could put the link in the chat because I'm looking and I can't find it. And like, it's hard to find things from 2012 like these days when you.
Yeah, you know what I can do is I'll post it into the group right now, because if I post it into the chat, for some reason Facebook, or not Facebook, but YouTube will flag it and they won't let me put it up there. So, but what I can do is I will I'll post that into the Justice group right now so that everybody has that. It's definitely it's really good.
I think the title is something like David Crowley interview with Planet X Radio, something like that. So.
Yep. David Crowley, writer, director of Gray State feature film.
That is it.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, and while we're on the subject of the feature film, the incredibly obnoxious guy who was rebuttaling Dan and Greg at one point on his terrible YouTube channel, giving us all his expert breakdown of how a film budget works. I forget that kid's name, but
God. Who was that?
Just so everybody knows, you're completely wrong about everything you said, dude. You tried to say that comedy films like Something About Mary have the budget that David and crew were talking about for Gray State. Well, I'd like to explain to you how John Wick 1 has a $20 million budget, so you don't know what you're talking about. So next time you give us a breakdown of a Hollywood feature film, why don't you actually get your facts straight, bud, because you're dead wrong. So that's number one on my hit list.
Nice.
Anybody else have anything for me?
That's great.
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about. He is wrong on a lot of things. So.
One question.
Yeah, that's just
I want to ask a question here. You know, they say David Crowley committed suicide. Since you've had contact with him, he didn't display any type of attitude or heart or mental state that would indicate he would commit suicide. Wouldn't that be true?
Yes, and this is the strangest suicide I've ever seen in my life. Just saying. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. And you knew him, or at least talked with him. And was your impression that he seemed to be in such a state? I don't think, based on what
I
I
mean,
heard, that indicated anything like that.
yeah, I mean, this question's been asked to me before. I think we discussed this, Dan, when I came on, Greg, when I came on with you and Dan.
Right.
You know,
Good.
not anything that I had very minimal contact with him. You know, a few
Right.
emails, maybe some social media direct messages, but I didn't get any. Now, granted, this was 2.5 years before the incident. So I
Right.
didn't get any indication of that whatsoever. You know, when you listen to the interview, we talked about the feature film, a sequel. I think we may have brought up video games, graphic novels. My co-host proposed the idea to him of doing a live, I don't even know what you call it, a live performance of Gray State, some sort of Broadway. So we literally spoke about like 4 or 5, you know, mediums of this material. It would strike me very odd if someone was planning to go that in depth for a release, that you would cut it all short by ending your own life. And granted, I'm not best friends with him or anything, but it just seems like a lot of planning. Right, you know what I mean? It seems like you're planning a whole... It would be like if George Lucas did that to himself in the middle of the Star Wars trilogy. You know, it just wouldn't make any sense. Why would you go through all that planning, you know? So that's
And he had it all set up and going, and he was looking to fulfill this. So, yeah, doesn't make any sense. Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
So it would seem, yeah, correct.
Wow.
Plus, he was having a show come out, too. So why would he just kill his whole family?
Correct.
And he had written to a producer in the middle of December. You could feel, when you're reading the email, he was excited about this project, and he was trying to bring other people onto it.
Yeah, he was.
Correct, yeah.
Oh.
And you're talking about
and
Jason Allen.
the miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah. And people get confused about that as well. Again, going back to the concept trailer, you know, if anyone who knows anything about the filmmaking process, like especially in the modern era, it's very, very common for people to shoot concept trailers and what else? There's another word for it other than concept trailer, but if you go all over YouTube, you'll see all sorts of these things that people have made for indie projects. It's not really saying that you're going to make, it's kind of like a pilot or something like that. It's not necessarily saying you're going to make a feature film or a series. It's basically whatever the deal you land is what you get. And something as complicated and extensive as Gray State, it's very probable that it could have ended up being a series, because with that amount of material, the way to split it up would be incrementally and, 10 episodes over a season, right? As opposed to like 2 or 3, 3-4 hour movies. That's a ton of content. So it would actually make a lot of sense to break it down. And an example would be Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards. He wrote so much material for that it was looking like it was going to be a series, and he actually condensed it down to a feature film. So that was like the opposite process, as opposed to writing a feature film screenplay and then extending it out into a web series or whatever, a streaming series, which it looks like was the case here.
Yep.
Well, that's not indicative of somebody that's looking to cut it short at all. And it also indicates that he had plans going forward that he was excited about. And so I'm more impressed more and more, because I thought, I don't know David Crowley, maybe he did do this. That's always in the back of my mind.
Right,
and
I agree.
It's just that the facts didn't support it from what I was seeing. And knowing this type of information now from his personal edge and from your personal experience with him means that it seems highly unlikely, possible but unlikely, that he would have really, one, killed his family and then himself. And it seems more and more that this was an outside, multi-person elimination of somebody and his family, from my perspective. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. The most interesting part of the discussion with my interview, in my opinion, was when we discussed the would-be sequel, part 2. And again, as you said, why would you be planning that if you were at the same time planning on cutting it short. And we kind of questioned him on that, like, oh, you know, there's going to be a part, you know. And Greg knows I was already crapping up my pants over part 1. So when I heard part 2, I was like, oh, man, this is going to be amazing, you know, maybe a trilogy or something like that. And, you know, the way he described it was, it wasn't necessarily Gray State 2 or anything like that, but more of a continuation of the story of the original story. So, again, we're back to writing all this extensive material. You know, it seems like planning for the future.
That's right.
It would be good to talk with you and kind of discuss what his original theme and storyline on the Gray State was, and kind of flesh that out a little bit, in my opinion, would be a good thing to discuss. Because I think, from my perspective, that in my opinion, may have been part of the reason or a motive to take him out.
Yeah, it's possible. You know, based on Greg and Dan's research, with these, you know, I'll put it like this: in the beginning, you know, I kind of thought some of the same things that a lot of the other people think, which is, you know, the content of Great State and stuff like that. But with these nefarious characters of the Sean Wrights and Eric Sayworth and some of these goops that were around in the original, like it's just amazing the background that Dan was able to dig up on these guys. You know, especially the $60,000 check. David's mom. You know, it's like one thing after another. So I've kind of swayed my opinion, you know, with more of these developments. But yeah, I mean, I think there's something else. I mean, the amount of inconsistencies alone is like incredible. So,
and that would be good to bring all those into it. That because I'm hearing the fact that he had a lot of nefarious ones around him, and that may have had a vested interest in taking him out. But you know, the thing that gets me again is his daughter and his wife. You know.
Right.
How did they come into it that they needed to be or tortured and killed? It could be indicative that somebody wanted to take control from David. I don't see that would have been happening. But it's interesting how these things transpired, and the fact that it's made to look like, or staged to look like, that he was the unlikely one to kill, and then his family, and then himself and his dog being left alive. Why didn't he kill the dog too? It has some inconsistencies that just don't make sense.
Well,
they needed somebody to blame.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, you know, I think we know the answer to that, right? Because the dog ate two human skulls and a young girl's arm, right? And I don't think there's any other case of that happening ever. So how can we believe that in this case here? Is my question.
Correct.
That's the
Yeah, the
strange
dog
thing.
ate my homework.
And they can eat anything at that point.
Yeah. Maybe the dog
Yep.
did it. Maybe the dog did it.
There you go. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the conclusion Kenneth Maines came to.
Out of Apple Valley, it might be the
I'm not
Case closed.
I'm not pointing fingers at any particular person. But one thing that I did want to mention that I find really interesting was his communications that he was having. You know, he went to an attorney, he had something drafted, he wanted them to sign it. They didn't want to sign it, and there was a little bit of communication back and forth between them, and then on the same day, he posted this snipey thing on Facebook that he was just gonna give it away. He was, I can't remember exactly what he said. He was gonna.
Okay, so let me stop you right there, because I've been listening to basically all these, and some people are still confusing the multiple projects, and that's kind of like driving me insane. See, the original Gray State is a feature film, thriller, you know, whatever. It's a narrative. It's basically fiction. You know, a lot of people lose their minds when you call it fiction because of the source material. but it's still a character-driven narrative. What David was going to give away free was Gray State: The Rise. That was a documentary, which kind of gives you the back material, right? And then you also have the abysmal swap-documentary, as Greg refers to it as, which is A Gray State. So that's where people are getting confused. It's 3 separate projects.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to like insinuate that he was not a nice person or anything like that. I was wondering, like, if there was bad blood between some people, you know, that he was dealing with.
Definitely.
Is what I'm wondering about.
That's absolutely the case. Yeah, without a doubt.
Because he didn't want, you know, because he wanted to move on in a certain direction or whatever, and he wanted someone to sign a release and this and that and the other, that, you know, and maybe that's why, you know, when everyone says, well, they disconnected themselves from everyone, well, maybe they got to the point to where they felt like they didn't know who they could trust. Correct. I mean, I've even gotten there. The whole process.
Oh yeah.
I can't even imagine how he could have possibly started feeling, and how Kamel could have possibly started feeling, especially if they were being targeted or whatever, which I still don't know for sure if that's what was going on. I keep tossing different ideas around, but I can honestly say that I know what it's like when dealing with toxic people and stuff like that, and you get to a point to where it's like I'm just done with everyone. I'm just sick of dealing with everyone, you know. And so, I mean, I don't see it odd that they cut people off. The way it's being painted is it's such a strange thing. I mean, I've cut people off. Right. I mean, I'm sure we all have. I'm sure that we've all cut toxic people out of our lives. So, I mean, I don't see why and I'm not saying that anyone's toxic or whatever, I'm not pointing any fingers, but I'm just saying if they viewed it that way, I don't see it as being unusual.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this case the difference would be, you know, selling a project for multiple $1 million. What was the original budget for the concept trailer? Do you know, Greg? I think it was like $5,000 or $10,000 or something, or less than that. So.
Are you talking for the trailer?
Yeah.
Yeah, they made the trailer on $6,000.
Boom. So there you go. You're talking about a crew of 10, 20 guys that made this concept trailer for $6,000. It went viral, 3 million views, more so, you know, after David, and then that's the exact problem here. Now he's writing the script for possibly, you know, 30 million or upwards of that if they, you know, monetize and merchandise out the brand. You know what I mean? So that's where things are complicated.
I agree.
So they took David's death and monetized it, basically made money off of it.
Yes, they did, and they still are.
Where he would have been making money.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah, that's where you have the so-called documentary. But I mean, I think the whole thing. Go ahead.
You know, because I don't think I've been able to find out from anyone else. Do you know if they're able, like, who has rights to all of it now? Who are they able to move forward with it? Who has the rights?
I'm pretty sure Greg can tell you that.
I mean,
not us.
It'll be in limbo for.
It's David's dad, right? The last I heard was Dan Crowley Sr., but you know, last I heard was he would not be moving it forward. I mean, in order for it to move it forward, I mean, it's even more complicated now. If he's the, whatever you want to call it, owner of the trust or the owner of the brand, if he were to sell it off to Hollywood to get made, right, which is basically what happens in this situation, a studio buys the screenplay or the script, whatever the treatment, whatever rough draft condition that it's in. I don't even think it's finished. Maybe it's mostly finished. Hollywood completely rewrites these things when they buy it. So even if he were to sell it, who's to say that really anything they could change 90% of it? You know what I mean? So it's really
they could
strange.
shelf
But
it.
from what I heard, it wouldn't be going forward.
Yeah, they could totally shelf it and just say, you know what, we
That
bought it,
too,
thank
that
you,
too.
bye-bye. And that's it.
They could combine it with another project. They could make it PG-13. Literally anything could happen. So.
Yep.
So that's why the sloppy memory was so important then, because they had to make money some way off of this.
Right.
Because they couldn't make it go forward, so in order to make money, okay, we'll make a sloppumentary.
Yeah, that's how it would seem, but he ultimately chose to release it free. So I think there was some back and forth there as well.
And Dan Senior and Danny August Mason, they filed paperwork to get David's screenplay, I believe.
That's right.
For the Gray State, but right now all that paperwork is in legal limbo.
Yeah, Danny Mason tried pitching this to the same people that David was actually working with, and they said no.
Right. Yep, correct. And yeah, that's where you get the whole Gray State Universe LLC.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing with Danny, I can somewhat understand where he would be coming from, because he helped conceptualize a lot of this material. He was the one that used to lecture on conspiracy theory. He supposedly taught a lot of this stuff to David. So he was, if there was a second in command that was helping developing it, would have been him.
Right.
Where I guess the point to be made that I think Greg and Dan have covered this is, where do you draw the line between a guy who sat there and gave ideas to a guy that actually typed out the words and created the story and the character-driven narrative? You know what I mean? So I guess that's where you have to split there.
Yep.
Which was David.
That's right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This was David's baby.
Yep.
So who's controlling it now? The guy Mason, you're saying, is controlling this?
Well,
David's father supposedly owns the project.
But Mason is still working on it.
He was, as far as we know, he was, but yeah, nothing ever materialized. Greg posted that 2017 cover they did with Joe Biggs, that other random guy, and yeah, no, I mean, Danny moved down to Austin, so he's not even out there anymore. So yeah, no, it's there hasn't been much movement on it. Is that Gray State Universe Facebook still up, Greg? I know that was up for a while.
I don't know if that's up. I think I was blocked from that, so I'm not really sure. They we had a little falling out.
Yeah, I saw some of that. That was interesting. At least you got somewhat of a response from him. I couldn't even do that.
Yeah, well,
So it's still in the works, kind of.
I think it's dead. I think it's.
So they tried to do.
I think it's dead in the water right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically is. Danny tried to create an offshoot company, Gray State Universe, which was, kind of be a rebranding of the original material, and nothing ever materialized. I mean, who knows what he did with it, if he had a pre-existing rough draft of David's work, or if he tried to rework something himself, or if he tried to rewrite something himself altogether. There's basically no details on it.
Huh. So this is gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
It's dead. There was a movie called Captive State. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that or seen it. I haven't seen it yet, but I do plan on seeing it. There's been a couple movies that have come out since that did make me wonder if maybe somebody bought it and kind of shelved it, or Maybe they stole some of the concepts from it. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how all of that works. David was going to
Yeah, I mean,
Hollywood, right? There's no way that he was going to be able to live in Minnesota and get his dreams going. He was bound for Southern California, right, Ross?
I mean, that's, I have my own opinion on that. I mean, without a doubt, I mean, it's my understanding that I can't even remember if we covered this in the interview, but or some other interview that I listened to with David, but what's up?
I said, oh, wow. Did y'all know Comel was a senior at Baylor University? Guess where? I live here in Waco, Texas. She was a senior here at Baylor University.
Yeah, I heard they were down there. I don't know if I knew that detail.
Comel.
Yeah.
David Crowley.
Met in Texas. They met each
Yeah, I think
other in Texas.
they met down there, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, they met in my home area then.
Yeah, we're gonna have you do some follow up on that, Walter.
That one is interesting. Right here in my hometown, I just was doing some little look at Comel and everything, and she went to Baylor University. I went, oh my goodness. So they were died in the. That's a Southern Baptist kind of like university.
Interesting.
And deep they were deeply devoted Christians in that case. Baylor is not cheap to go to either.
Baylor, I hardly knew it.
Expensive university.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, so as far as David, it would totally make sense for him to be out here. For like Greg was saying, the producer and studio standpoint. I mean, it would probably highly be unlikely that he would be directing. I'll put it like this: a major film studio is not going to let a first-time director direct a $30 million project. It's just not going to happen. Now, if he were just writing and producing, he probably could have done that remotely, Greg, out in Minnesota. Because if you're writing, all you're doing is typing. You're getting out. Granted, that's the backbone of the whole project. You can't start without the screenplay. Obviously, makes sense.
Right.
But so theoretically, yeah, he could have done that from back home, but ideally, if you're going to be meeting with producers and all this stuff flying back and forth like, as he was doing, it would make perfect sense for him to just relocate, especially if that's what he wanted to do, take Great State all the way and perhaps do other projects as well. Well, then, yeah, obviously you want to be out here,
Right.
So. As far as the captive state stuff, yeah, I think I did see that trailer. The other thing about it is just making a concept trailer and some of the imagery that they showed, in the concept trailer. As Greg said, we've seen similar projects to stuff like this. I mean, nobody owns any, none of that stuff is copyrighted unless you're literally using the name Gray State or the characters created in David's project. So, I mean, literally anybody could take the concept trailer and rework it to, a similar pre-apocalyptic uprising, kind of downfall story, and no one has any claim to any of that source material. You know what I mean? So it's a gray area, too.
Yeah.
Pun intended.
Big gray area.
Greg, if I send those screenshots to you, will you get them to Ross in regards to the legal paperwork that his dad and Dan, and Danny August Mason filed?
Yes.
To get the rights for the screenplay?
Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I see that he had 2.5 million views on the YouTube and 57,000 followers on Facebook.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He had a following that would interest Hollywood real quick.
Yep.
And
I would agree with that.
And I think that with that, he had a bona fide moneymaker coming up. Wow. Okay. And his wife, Comel, went to Baylor University. And that's fairly recent.
Yeah, I think 2011 maybe, sometime around then. No, cause she would have graduated. No, it would have had to have been like 2000,
Wow.
2008 maybe or something like that, somewhere around then. I'll have to look that up. I'll have to look up the
Yeah,
exact date. But
I'm curious. I'm wondering if I could contact Baylor and just say, I need some information. Probably wouldn't get it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wonder how that works.
Yeah, that would be difficult because that's family and type information. But I wonder,
It-
they do have yearbooks. I wonder if I could.
Well,
yeah,
you figure everything is public records. Is Baylor a public or is it a private?
Oh no, this is a private college.
Okay.
yeah, I don't know that
I
much.
wonder. I don't know.
I don't know that much about that college, so it's interesting
might
to hear
not
you talk
be.
about what what the university is.
Well,
I had
Baylor
just assumed
started
it
in
was.
1845 as a Christian
Mhm.
Baptist style college, and it's very old. One of the oldest colleges in Texas, of course, because it began in 1845 here in Waco area, or not in Waco. I think it was located somewhere else and moved to Waco. I'm not too sure about that. It is a very big. It's high in medicine.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it's not like it's a big deal to get into Baylor.
Yeah, I didn't
Baylor,
know
You
that.
don't. It's not easy to get in. It's like
Yeah.
any Ivy League school or anything. It's very. My
Yeah.
brother went to school there, and he said, and it took a lot of money.
Wow, I had no
to
idea.
do it. It's very expensive, and you have to have recommendations, and you have to go through a process to get into Baylor, and just like with any good major college, and
That's what blows me away about Kamel.
she was
I
a
mean,
very intelligent girl. She had
Correct.
to get in and go to Baylor.
Yeah.
That just struck me when I was looking. I went, she went to Baylor, a senior.
Yeah, and she went to other schools. I mean,
She did.
she had some of the things under her belt. It wasn't even funny. She has a very impressive background.
Correct.
I mean,
I wonder what was her major. Does anybody know what she would? Well, I don't know. Maybe y'all look.
Nutrition or some flavor of nutrition. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was something dietitian, nutrition,
Yeah,
stuff like
that's,
that.
that's
Yeah, for
Baylor.
sure.
That's definitely a Baylor thing. Medicine.
Is there any
dietitian.
mind control stuff involved in Baylor, as far as like the study of the mind, the study of the brain,
I'm
anything
sure that there
connected
would
to
be.
that?
They probably have psychiatry and probably would be involved in that. They've been here since 1845.
Because
And
most of
anytime you're
the
dealing with the,
yeah, because
yeah, I would agree that they would, because they're dealing with medicine and psychiatry, and I think it would be well within their. I'd have to look it up and see.
yeah, because almost every school that she's been to that I've looked at, they've had something like that. Not saying it's tied, not saying it's connected or anything, but yeah.
And the Epstein. They say suicide. I think this type of thing ties into things like with Epstein. When you're dealing with power, and you're dealing with what David dealt with, even though it was at the level of fiction. But to get that fiction accurate, you have to look at some pretty real stuff. And I think
For sure.
He stumbled into something, and they didn't want even it put out there in fiction or have it in his control anyway. I'm still very impressed with that fact, because he was dealing with international power, in my opinion, and he hit on a nerve with some government or somebody in it, in my opinion. And
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. I would put it this way. I mean, there's a reason why Hollywood has never made this movie, and when I say that, I'm not referring to Gray State. I just mean anything even close to it. You know what I mean? They've looked at every other topic, and they've completely exploited and regurgitated them 1,000 times. But for some reason, this has never even been touched. So you have to assume,
just like his murder, not touched. The movie,
That's true,
not
too.
touched, and it just goes away. And it's it's interesting because if there's money to be made and they can get it, Hollywood would be all over it. But
That's
there's a
exactly what I was
reason,
going to say.
and there's a reason they're not touching this. And the military is tied into Hollywood so deep. Uh, I I just have it's just a unction, a feeling within that says this was like a military touch thing. And one of the best ways to turn away anybody from thinking it's military or, high level hit is to make it look what? Totally crappy, like it was a infidel that didn't know what the hell he was doing. And then people don't think it's a government hit at all. The government wouldn't do that. So to me, this begins to feel more and more like he was targeted, not by people around him and the money, because those are obvious things that people would latch onto immediately. But it still points me to a direction that he knew something that, you know, because, if you've got an input like the others had, they can go to court and get that worked out and make money that way. But if it's dealing with things that people don't want exposed, the only way to deal with that is deal with the person who's got the information and make sure they know and that others around them know. You leave it alone. And the effect on the police department and those that investigated it means there is a observation going on at a level that is above the state, in my opinion.
Well,
really is.
How about this? How about using low-level assets that were close to him, in case any of them goes down, they're the fall guys. And then, as you said, you have the higher levels to it as far as, the police investigation and further on.
Exactly.
That seems to make sense to me.
That's what makes sense to me, because you don't put your high power guys doing that. If you're dealing with something, you want to use Occam's razor. You want to make it simple and believable. And
exactly.
And this kind of works, and it throws in that element of confusion with how the murders were, what was missing, what was there, what wasn't, and the evidence there seems to be almost conflictory in a strange way, as I've looked at it. Meaning there's bullet holes all in the room, and they're all laid together in that one room, but it doesn't make sense as to how the bodies were, and the missing limbs and everything, which they couldn't find. They blamed the dog. And I'm going, this looks like a total slop job. But if you're a professional, and you want to make it look like it was handled by somebody that didn't know what they were doing to throw off the whole thing, that would be a perfect set. Make it look like somebody had no clue what they were doing. It was just a quick get it done and run, like it was just impromptu. They just decided to kill him, and there it is.
Right. I mean, I think Dan's brought that up before where, as you said, if it's going to be a super clean, high-level, top-tier professional, why not have some expert Navy SEAL sniper snipe David in the head from 10 miles away, one clean shot, and it's over. You know what I mean? Completely random. No one sees where it came from. No evidence. No shell. No really no weapon. Nothing. You know what I mean? If he's the target, or even better, put something in his medicine or sideswipe him on the highway and have him crash his car. Oh yeah, he just lost control. And there's a million other ways it could have been done as opposed to this abysmal crime scene.
Yep, and it seems like it was making a statement. It was making a statement. They were saying something with this, and they tried to bring the Muslim influence and all of this. And I'm going,
sure.
I don't see that, but I see it as somebody that's sending a message to others with it, because it's just like cutting out the tongue of somebody. He was talking too much. Don't you do it?
Yep.
And so I see elements of that in this murder. And I'm going to just say it plain blank. This was a murder. And I think they wanted to send a message to people who are involved in whatever David was involved in, that was bringing light to an area or bringing out things, even in a fictional state, that they did not want to be referenced, even.
Yeah,
I agree.
certainly seems so.
And it frightens me in the fact that it happened in Apple Valley, and Kamel went to Baylor University. I thought, ooh, wow, that touches close to home. And
So, so where was Camille from, Greg? She was from Waco or down there in Texas, Houston, something like that, right?
Well, she was born in a military base in Saudi Arabia, and then in a U.S. military base in Saudi Arabia, and then they moved to Pakistan, and then they moved to Texas. Yeah, and
Fort Hood.
they've lived in a couple different places in Texas.
Fort Hood. I bet she lived in the Killeen area.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it was
And
Yep.
down there somewhere, yeah.
Fort Hood is the biggest. He was in the
Okay,
Army.
so
He was in the Army, right?
yes, he was in the army.
Okay, if he was in the Army, he was stationed at Fort Hood if he came to Texas, most likely. Which then would have put him close to Baylor University.
That makes sense.
And that would mean that if she was going there and he met her in this area, most likely, or obviously, she's going to college here, he may have been part of the Waco scene for a time. And Waco is an area where the largest Masonic lodge is, I found out, and a Masonic library.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was shocked. I thought, what? And I researched it, and the largest Masonic lodge is here. Largest means they have all the, that means if they bring in any Masons in, they can have a major Masonic gathering here in a very low level town that doesn't bring any light on that area. Everybody respects, it's not your business to let it be done. And that's the way it is around here. And I was thoroughly amazed to hear that we had the largest, or one of the largest in the world, meaning in comparison to any of other lodges, even the ones where the main lodges come from in England, with the Queen being one of the head Masons, or is the head Mason. I mean, the Scottish Rite. So that means that this area in Texas is a major operational point tied to Bohemian Grove, and maybe even, which ties into the other smaller groups, whether you call it the Bilderbergers or the Odd Fellows Club, Masonics, Skull and Bones. I think they all work within the same operational mode, and they work on the agenda of each an aspect of control of the populace, and in various ways are in charge of that to some degree, and influence maybe more the direction they take in it. And it affects the locals, and where they need to input, whether it be Apple Valley, or it be Waco, they'll step in as needed. And as you said, use the lower level people to kind of clean up an area that they don't want to touch or be tied to. And I think it's just verbally done. There's no paper trail, there's no meeting trail, there's no anything. And it could be a military thing. It could have gone through the Pentagon. I don't know. But this is interesting. And since it was a movie dealing with Hollywood, the military is highly involved in these things. In some movies, and they will give their blessings or say, no, we don't want that out or this out, but do it this way. And since he was dealing in an area which was describing a new totalitarian type of government that was controlling and that had overthrown the U.S., maybe this was something that he was getting, that he stumbled into the real world plan of bringing that about, which would be something, they hide it in plain sight, but they don't want it told about directly with details.
Right.
And
Right.
so that's what stuck me with this. I thought, when I heard what it was about, I go, wow, that ties into real world events, of course.
Right.
And he had
Definitely.
ties with people that were, and he was tying it in with people that were maybe in government or military, who knows who he was getting his data from. but then they decided that this wasn't what they wanted him to do.
Well, I mean, all of that is definitely plausible, and I definitely have my own theories along similar lines. But I guess my question in that case would be, what about a film like Conspiracy Theory with Mel Gibson or National Treasure with Nicolas Cage? You know, why would things like this be allowed, and what the difference would be? Because this isn't the first film to cover this content. It would have been just the first one to do it in that way. So, I mean, they've let stuff slide before.
It was
the
first one to get maybe to the heart of it.
That could be true.
Were around the fringes. This was saying where it's coming from and how it's going to evolve. And if
more direct.
Yeah. And if I was in control of things, I'd say, you know what? No. Let's not go down that road. Do it like Nicholas. Do it like this. But we don't want that, because that's touching too close. As it says, they'll hide it in plain sight, but they don't want you knowing details. And the one thing that stands out is the way I looked at it, he was showing the United States getting overthrown, which is happening right now, as it started in 2008. And it's interesting that was happening then, and that would have been about the time Comel was at Baylor, and where the conception maybe of this came about. I don't know. Back in that time, or maybe it was even before, maybe when he was in the military and had data that he picked up there, because I heard captains, admirals, and people talk, and you go, wow, that would make a good movie. and I think he got into something that was over his head, and being from his Christian aspect, he said, he would have more details sometimes of how things are going, and would look down the paths that could lead to some truth that would not be plausible for them to put out there, even if it were put in fictionary gray state movie, form. And he for him to be killed and his family was illustrating that something he had and that he knew and that he was putting into this that they thought was intolerable to them. Now, it does not say that there could not have been amongst his nefarious friends some jealousy or some desire for more control, but it doesn't make sense that they'd kill him, since if he would go on with it, they could actually sue. If they did have direct input, that would get them some monetary gain out of it, which probably that was what was involved. And when you're talking about millions of dollars, that could be motive for suing, but I don't see it being a motive for killing him when that's your cash cow, so to speak.
Well, I'll tell you why I do, because, the only one that we know of that's on record of having direct input is Mason. So, all these other kind of, fringe guys that stood around and held lighting and microphones for recording, it'd be highly unlikely that they would have any claim. Right. They wouldn't have any creative claim to it. Plus,
we're talking about the ones who had input into scripting, the plan, the idea, the concept.
And that might only be one or two people, just David and Danny. So, that when, what Greg and Dan are referring to when David was sending out the emails and redrafting things with the lawyer and the contracts and all this, getting everybody sign off, the only one I could see having a vested interest is Danny, because he helped conceptualize the story. He was supposedly, at least in the concept trailers, we know he was the lead actor, does have some acting experience, so he was supposed to be attached, at least at an early stage of the project, as the lead actor. And from what we see in the emails, David at least was claiming that he would keep him on. Now, we don't know what would happen. Maybe that's what Danny's hesitation was. He signs off on his claim to the conceptual storyboard, and then once he signs on the dotted line, it's over, and then David gets rid of him, and okay, what am I going to go use Danny Mason for when I can go get Keanu Reeves? You know what I mean? I mean that's where the whole game changes there. But these other guys, Greg, what was the term you used for these compromised, we are changed guys? They were coadjutors or some sort of double agents. I forget the word that you use for these guys being compromised, but that was really a game changer for me, because you're talking about a bunch of guys that don't have any work history. You know, they live in these, you know, roommate situations with duffel bags like full of cash, and they have no work history. And then this guy's making YouTube videos yelling at Dan, talking about, you guys can't figure out what I do because you're not smart enough. I'm like, well, dude, I saw your rap songs, and I definitely know that wasn't your career. So, like, let's get it together here, bud. You know, so when you got a bunch of characters like this, you know what I mean? It really muddies the waters here. So when I was referring to these low-level guys, I mean, I'd be hesitant with the military angle, because, like, in my opinion, I think Hollywood has a higher infiltration by intelligence. I mean, we know right off the bat that CNN, the media, all these major, you know, media assets are, like, you know, probably at least half, 50% or more intelligence assets. So you could assume the same for Hollywood, if not more. So I would say the intelligence, you know, like you guys were saying about Epstein and stuff, like, oh, you know, it gets to a certain level where they're going to, you know, convict the case to him, and then it's like, oh, no, he's an intelligence asset. You can't do that, and it gets stopped right there in the tracks. So, you know, we're kind of seeing that kind of creep out more into the mainstream more and more now. So what I'm saying, if you have these other, you know, so-called, you know, we are change guys or whatever, pull a job off like this, and then 2 or 3 of them go down, it's whatever, because they're expendable. Like you said, it doesn't come back to a lodge or the military, or, you know what I mean? Like, I would have to assume that things are planned out enough that it's never, ever going to come back on, you know, people who would be making decisions, or even close, you know?
Yeah, no trail.
Just my 2 cents. Right.
No contact, no trail.
Because I was thinking along the same lines as you when I started out, but the more research these guys did, you know, it's Eric Sayward, Sean Wright, you know, just all these abysmal characters. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like, it was almost never ending at one point.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, that could be good distraction, because you want that type of environment to keep people away from the truth, is make it look like it obviously has to be another direction. That is a pro's way of doing it, because it makes it harder to really conceptualize that it could be something that, oh, well, it couldn't be that. Oh, look, at this is just obvious. Anytime it's too obvious, you've got to be careful.
Right, for sure.
You know, they say causation.
Muted.
Yeah, so we have to look at it from my perspective. I look at it from a broad view, like, what are the implications? Who gains the most out of this, and why? And what is the reason they're gaining it? Why would they want to kill? Why would they? Who has the most to gain from him being dead versus his living? Those that are making money and could make money or could sue him would better off be served by him being alive, because you can't sue a dead man, and you can't control the project, and you don't get anything then. You may try, but it's not going to result in anything good for you. But if you see something that's there that's going to be causing, because under quote unquote national security, legally, it could be done. And if it did come back to somebody, they could go take it to the court. The court goes, and they go, oh, no, it was this, it was this, it was a professional, it was a hit, because, and in the subject, and you never hear anything else. And you don't get any public report, and you definitely will not get any media import from it. And I'm noticing that with this. Same thing.
And that's why when I see a $60,000 check that was possibly a forged signature, that, you know, Dan Sr. was out of the country in Germany, and the cops didn't even look into it, wow. You know, it starts getting extremely strange. Like, once Greg and Dan started pointing out stuff like this, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is ridiculous. You know what I mean? So, it's definitely some strange stuff going on with the case.
But they say every rabbit hole ends up at the final den.
For sure. I mean, hey, one thing
Unmuted.
you guys can help me out with this that was posted in the group recently was this this dog owner that was eaten by these 8 dogs or whatever. I know it's just like a random article someone posted, but like,
Yeah.
I know it's, however many dogs, 8 or 10 dogs or whatever, but did anyone verify in that case if they ate the guy's skull? Because I'm wondering, even if 10 dogs can't do it, there's no way one can, right? So.
Well, to eat a skull, man, you have to. Yeah, that's pretty hard to break down a skull. I mean, to.
That's
eat
what I'm
skull,
thinking.
And I'm talking about bones and all, teeth, jaw. That would be. Generally, they're not interested in the skull. They're interested in the flesh.
Sophia might
Wild
have something
animals
on that.
won't even touch the skull. If you look into the missing 411, most of the people who are found, like their bodies are found, all they find is the skull. They don't find the other extremities. So wild animals won't even touch it. Why would this dog touch it?
Yeah, and it wasn't like a 400-pound like Shepherd or Doberman or anything like that. So that's one thing. The other thing is we have 2, not 1 but 2, and Ronnie's entire arm. So certainly.
And you got 3 hands too that are gone.
Now that as well, and then the David supposedly mummified hand, like you guys were saying earlier. So like it's.
Mhm.
And that does
Quite
not make
strange.
sense. That does not make sense. Hands don't mummify when you get murdered in your room. I
Right.
mean, that does not happen, and that strikes me as highly strange.
And-
How?
Unless it was tied up or tied off, like some people theorized. Which
Right,
I mean, I don't know anything about this, but.
But if you tie it off to where there's no blood circulation, okay, yeah, it dies,
That's what I was thinking.
and then it rots. It doesn't mummify. If you've got moisture and bacteria, it takes it to being a dry, very dry atmosphere to get the skin to stay into a mummified state. The liquid withdrawn and gone. So that suggests what happened to his hand prior to him being killed, or after he was killed.
And that's why that's one of the dead ends that I can't figure out on this thing. The other thing is Danny is a Jeet Kune Do, which is Bruce Lee's martial art trained martial artist. So you know what I mean. If David was found with his throat punched in and a tomahawk on top of his head, I'd be like, oh, it was Danny. So easy taste. But like you said, with all these sloppy, kind of dead ends, it really muddies the waters.
And that's what somebody wanted, because a mummified hand, something had to be done to that hand to mummify it, and that takes time. A mummification doesn't occur in a week.
David's gun safe was palm print activated or finger activated. Is that correct, Greg?
No, I think it was just a key, like a number, like,
Oh, just a key code.
Yeah,
okay, I was gonna say, because I was thinking maybe perhaps like something would have been, obviously you assume just cut it off, but I was wondering if perhaps it could have been related to that somehow. But yeah, if it was just a punch code, then maybe not.
Yeah, it's like when you have to like put your hand down or something like that. Yeah, something like that. But it's not like a
Right.
biometric. I mean, as far as I know.
Right.
The more I learn about
I
this
get-
case, the stranger it becomes.
Yeah,
And get this,
that's the
Ross.
truth.
Gamel's DNA was found on the gun safe, but it wasn't blood. It was like skin cells and stuff from when she touched it.
So she
Yeah,
opened
and
it and took the gun out. That would seem to
So-
indicate that.
Well, possibly in self-defense, but I think what you guys were saying before, it's just if they're the owners and just going to the range or cleaning it or whatever, just handling it, that should be expected.
Their DNA should be on
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
But
yeah,
I mean,
but David's DNA wasn't. That's what I was trying to get.
okay,
Correct,
that
correct.
is weird. That's very weird.
And
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you-
that's right.
I've said this before, but I actually called. I live in Alabama, and Auburn University is like a very, very good veterinary school. So they've got some very good professors there. And I called and spoke with someone, a professor in veterinary medicine there, and asked them about the possibility of paleo eating all of that, and he said that he saw it like almost impossible because dogs,
Right.
their pH level has to be a certain level in order for the acid in their stomach to be acidic enough for them to digest it. Otherwise, they're going to get an intestinal blockage, or they're going to be pooping out basically blocks of chalk. And so, and I've talked to 2 other veterinarians where I live, and they've said the same thing. They've said, dogs do scavenge, but every single one of them that I spoke with said, okay, no, gruesome, but yeah, if they were shot in the head and they had exposed brains, stuff like that, yes, the dogs could scavenge that, but they wouldn't eat the skull. They would continue on to like soft parts of the body, like they would usually canines go for the belly, is what I've been told. They go for the belly, they go for soft spots. So the fact that none of that was disturbed on them is kind of perplexing to me, but very perplexing to me.
So theoretically, paleo should be dead if he ate 2 human skulls and an entire arm, or at least have extreme digestive complications, which would have been obvious from the scene, or whatever state he would have been found in.
Based on what I've been told by like at least 3 other people, yes, that work in the field.
Yeah, so that makes no sense. As far as now, her DNA was on the gun, which I assume is the one that was by his hand or whatever. But wasn't there something about it being wiped down, or his DNA wasn't on it? Like that's you got anything on that, Greg?
DNA was on the gun, I believe.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull.
But there was no prints. Wasn't there no prints on it?
No, there was no. They couldn't find his prints.
Okay.
No.
All right, that drives me insane. How can there be no prints when it's found like next to his hand? Like unless what he woke back up and wiped it off like after he dead? Like I don't understand. Like what how could that be? I mean, this is like the Kurt Cobain thing that we were talking about before when I was on with you guys, Greg, all over again. Like at the bare minimum, if the gun was has never been cleaned by or serviced by the owner, you should have a lot of people's prints on it. I don't just mean the gun owner and his wife's prints. I mean like the guy who sold it to him. You know what I'm saying? Like any one of your friends who ever like touched it. Like come on, man. It's just that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got some more data. He did meet Comel in Waco. Fact.
Okay.
And she was a Pakistani, and they met, fell in love, and told their father and mother, Pakistanis have a way of doing things with this. But he came in and said, "I'm going to marry," and then the father said, "Well, if you're going to do that, if you love each other, okay." And Raina was born in August of 2009, and in September 2009, they moved from Waco. They were living in Waco to Minnesota. And then she got her job at the university as he was going to film school. And that's where he met Mason. And they got the idea based on conspiracies and interesting, it began in the summer of 2010. And that's when Daniel Mason, who met at a professor at film school there, and with websites devoted to conspiracies and suppressed information. And according to Mason, he came back in 36 hours there and stayed up for 24, saying, "You're onto something. Let's see where this goes." And that's where the Great State started. And have y'all read The New Yorker?
Yeah.
Here and there.
Well, this story is in The New Yorker.
Oh, okay. I think I did read that article way back when.
Yeah, and it's pretty involved and pretty deep. I'm going, wow. And
yeah, they got a lot of stuff wrong in that one, though.
In
They-
the
Yeah, that
yeah.
yeah,
What
that
did they
doesn't
get
surprise
wrong?
me.
What was wrong, Greg?
Well, all the stuff that they quoted me as pretty much is start with
I didn't
that.
see. I haven't seen. You mean the New Yorker has your quotes in here?
Well, I don't think they put any of them in there, but they definitely contacted me and I told them pretty much everything. Um,
Right.
Hmm.
I tried to tell the biggest thing that I tried to tell them about was item 57, and it was
Okay.
just like they didn't want to hear it. I could tell that a lot of the stuff that I
Yeah.
was telling them they didn't want to hear. First of all, they kept trying
Yeah.
to label me as something. Well, okay, you're a citizen journalist or you're this. And it's like no, I'm not. I'm not any of that. I'm just me. That's it. I'm just a guy that's looking into this like so many other people
Right.
are. And I can
Right.
clearly see there's something wrong here. That's what
Obviously.
Right.
yeah, and I mean, yeah. They should have known
And
that
it's
too.
interesting here that the day before a meeting, Comel found David curled on the floor in the bathroom crying.
Yeah.
What
Which
about that?
Yeah.
that's a film meeting or what?
No, no,
Yeah,
no. It says,
yeah.
It says the day before the meeting, and there was a meeting. Um, let's see. Arranged to meet Mike again in Los Angeles.
Right.
Yeah.
This was about the project, and she says the day before the meeting, Comel found David curled on the floor in the bathroom, crying.
Mhm.
And Mike regarded him. She was saying that he was worried that Mike would regard him as a fraud. I go, what? And Gray State was the most promising project, and it says we left. Mike Baggio told we left the meeting thinking we have to deal with this guy, which is interesting statement. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean that sounds pretty normal for an amateur filmmaker on their first, studio meeting.
It's a freak
I think.
out for the day before. The
Yeah,
meeting was,
exactly.
Yeah, a big guy, and you're going, oh crap, he might think I'm a fraud. I don't know why he would have thought that.
Yeah.
And it says that he wrote Gray State in September, and he wrote straight for 31 hours. And then he sent it to him, and September 17th, the Gray State poster, okay? And he was unsettled that they didn't respond immediately. Interesting.
Hey, Greg, didn't because I don't want to misquote anyone. I think I was reading. I'm not sure who. I don't know if it was you that had the conversation with Sidra or someone else, but she had said that when she was staying with them, that she was sleeping with Rania, and Rania woke up freaked out, and that she and Rania both saw like some kind of
Presence.
silhouette or specter or whatever, and freaked out, and that when Sidra went into Kamel and David's room, that David was on the floor praying,
Yes.
on his knees praying. And that hasn't gone anywhere.
That was supposed to be in Eric Nelson's film. All of that was.
See, that aspect of it.
I thought there was a brief reference. Wasn't there some sort of brief reference about something in the basement? It's been a while since I've seen the film now, but I thought there was
there were red rum aspects to it, but then they dismissed it. They dismissed it like,
Oh, it was
all
Comel. There was a Comel quote of her saying that she saw something, or thought she saw something, right?
Yeah,
Something like that. Yeah.
He was in there in the bedroom, and I don't know, Greg, was this when they were in the new house at this point, right? When she said that she heard this thing say, "Did you like the song?"
Yes.
And
the voice. That's what it was. The voice.
Then they felt, and then they felt something.
Yeah.
And then I guess she was having like nightmares, and this is when they were in their old place, when she was saying that she was having nightmares and the voice was telling her to leave David, and then she was having and see what they didn't really clarify and make very clear was in the documentary, when she's talking to him in the dark, was she sleeping? Had she had a nightmare when she was telling him what happened? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. I think David had went to Home Depot. He came back, and then she had something happening, but he witnessed it from what it sounds like. But yeah, and whatever happened, he basically had her replay it, and that's what he's filming. So I think the whole thing is kind of taken out of context, because it's like, well, if you're gonna put that stuff in there, put it in the proper context and put it all in there, or don't put any of it in there, because the way that they put it in there, they were trying to make her look crazy. Now they had already tried to make David look crazy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because
then they try to make Rania look crazy. Yeah, they try to make all three of them look
really
crazy.
Obnoxious. That was brutal.
That's what the New Yorker is doing. It's
Exactly.
reading things like,
Yeah.
he was insane, and it says on Christmas morning, David made a list of plans for coming year, and it says the next morning they left gifts in there, and it says that he got up and shot his daughter.
And they don't know that, right? And that's a total lie, because they don't know that.
Yeah.
They put it out as strict fact.
Correct.
Following the script.
Correct.
Well, as Greg and Dan said, when all this stuff kind of came off, it was almost like a concerted effort, like almost an intelligence plan of attack, you know what I mean, with these specific articles. And then when A Gray State came out, you had these, you remember those film reviews, Greg, and they all seemed like a copy and paste of, it was like it all came from the same, carbon
talking
copy.
Points.
You know what I mean? It was like the talking points and everything. That was all followed that one narrative, and it was like, they were 100%, reviews, and it's like, I don't think anyone who watched that gave it a 100%. You know what I mean? So it was like, and it was like several of them. You know what I mean? So like, not to say that couldn't happen, but it was more the talking points, like Greg said. Like, it was all from this same script. You know what I mean? It was like, as the boy said before, it was like, if you thought anything else other than what was being fed to you through these articles and documentaries, you didn't have the story right.
That's right.
Who is this? Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, what they found with the keyboard and the computer, and with the 53 despairing theme songs put to run continuously, you said. And in the office was an open notebook with dried blood in the margins. David had written, "Open the rise, most recently, and submit to Allah now." I'm going, wow, that sounds totally, and the blood on the couch and blood on the wall, Allahu Akbar, which means God is.
Yeah, the ripped out Quran pages, etc.
And this sounds totally staged. Goodness.
Yeah, it sounds like what a bunch of amateur idiots would do trying to frame a suicide. In my opinion.
Let's make it obvious it was suicide. And one who was not knowing how the hell to do it would do it. Let's have a computer with 53 sad songs, and sounds like a movie script.
Yeah, right, exactly. That sounds more like the movie part than anything that happened.
Yeah. Exactly. And how do we know that playlist that he had didn't have something to do with what he was working on? That maybe that was called Ascend. Maybe Ascend was a part of the script, and this was the type of music that he wanted to go along with that.
Or just his writing music. Right. Yeah. Could have been.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that's probably like one of my biggest issues is it was a 40 caliber pistol. Is that correct? So, how on earth given how close those houses look together in the pictures, I don't know anything about Apple Valley or Minnesota or any of that stuff, but just theorizing on a suburban neighborhood, how on earth nobody heard the gunshots, and then you have like this mummified hand and all that stuff. It really leads me to the conclusion is maybe it did happen, elsewhere, and then they were brought there to the living room and stage, or at the very least, like the basement or something like that, because a 40 caliber pistol is extremely loud. So I don't know, even late at night, I don't know. I can't really come up with any scenario where people don't hear that, or they do and they think it's fireworks or something. You know what I mean?
Or backfire from a car or some strange thing like that.
Right? Yeah, motorcycles. Yeah, but I mean, I feel. And how many shots was it, Greg? Like 5, 6 more?
Yeah, total I think were 6.
3
honestly,
were 3
2
were
or 3 should be a lot.
from
Well-
Right.
neighbor, but they discounted it.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, they only
that's-
left with 4 bullets on that first day, and then they had to come back and get the
Well,
5th, and come back and get the 6th.
I
Right.
see that
But
they're
they
slanted
left
here. The
with-
alt-right conspiracy theorists think the government killed the aspiring libertarian filmmaker David Crowley.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Truth is
yeah. I
far
remember that
stranger.
one.
The truth
That's
is
a
far
classic.
stranger. I wonder.
Right.
New Yorker.
The truth is far stranger. It's just no one's gotten to it yet.
That's right.
So.
It's like they
But,
got it.
Right.
It's like they've got it all down. We know what happened.
Pretty much.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah,
how they write it.
yeah. The New Yorker guy who's like a million miles away. Yeah, I'm gonna take his opinion.
Yeah, Alex. What was it? Let me.
Alec
look at him.
Wilkinson.
Yep. Is he the one? That
Yeah, I know.
Is he the one that talked to you, Greg?
Yes. Yeah.
I figured.
Yeah, I mean, he
Okay.
seemed like a very nice guy. I think I was on speakerphone. I think he said
Mhm.
that it was so that he could type whatever while I was talking to
Yep.
him. But I mean, I didn't tell him anything different than I wouldn't tell anybody else. Then he had
He
his.
used to be
his
a policeman.
Did he really? I
Oh,
did not
no.
know that. I did
Oh,
not know
man.
that.
Dude, I so far have not agreed with one person that is ex-police enforcement. So.
Hey, you know what?
It's gonna be
I've
difficult.
talked to many
Alec
cops that
Wilkinson worked
they.
as a policeman in Wellfleet, Massachusetts.
I didn't know that.
Oh man, that's my neck of the woods, man. Jeez, wow, that's rough.
And and
No, I know what you're saying,
Those are
Greg.
your
Though I'm
people.
sure there's plenty of guys that have
There are.
decent opinions, but I'm just
Local,
saying
yeah.
people who have written articles and
Oh yeah.
Oh,
right.
diatribes
Yeah.
haven't done well.
No, and
who's
they.
this Eric West? This guy that David had sent the screenplay to, and what was his name? You guys were going over it on one of the other
David
past
Kirkwood.
streams. Was it him? Oh, maybe it was him. That's the one who was looking at the project, and then him and Crowley had like split ties or whatever.
That was one of them. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that fits. Fits a
yeah, I
few.
know there's several, but I know there was like some articles written about it where he had some like quotes and stuff. And I would be interested in what he had to say to see if anyone actually has that rough draft. He was talking about how the whole he made the Red Dawn reference, and he said
Correct.
like the actual
That is
project
David-
had
yeah.
turned around and yeah.
That's
I
David
think you
Kirkwood. Yeah.
have you reached out to him?
No, I don't. I think we had some type of a contact. I might have made a comment on one of his things or something like that. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't believe too much of what that guy says. I do think it's definitely worth it. But he is totally convinced that David Crowley is guilty. So we got to start there.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm not saying as part of the case, but just more what he knows about the project and
Correct,
any
correct.
rough draft he
Oh, yeah.
might have. That'd be my only interest there. But
Well, he was- yeah,
anyone who's totally convinced,
Well, he was
Any
he,
public
You're saying.
references showing David Crowley as the killer.
he was one of the
Any
guys
public
that
reference-
really said that.
Any official or public reference I'm seeing is just showing David Crowley killed his wife and daughter.
Right,
And
of
I don't
course,
believe.
of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
Or
believe it.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's pretty much it.
You're saying, Greg?
Yeah, I was saying, David Kirk West was one of the guys that really made me think that David Crowley was taking his movie in a spiritual way. That because David Kirk West is actually quoted as kind of saying that it kind of goes there. It's more of a spiritual film, and then you can kind of see that. So you can see the way that David Crowley was going, and David Crowley even asks him if he's a Christian, and David Kirk West, the way that he answers that is also like yeah, he's like, he goes into these Christian themes, blah blah blah. But it's that guy. The biggest problem that I had was at that crucial moment. So many people didn't know anything. All these people were trying to tell us that David Crowley is guilty. Now, for some reason, I think around October or November, David Crowley actually unfriends David Kirk West. Actually blocks him. Like he's not talking to him. That to me was very, very strange too. I just wonder how many people David Crowley reached out to in that same way that all have those same stories that might all think that David Crowley is guilty now too.
It's quite a few, because I remember around that period he he unfollowed, and he made that post about I'm unfollowing all the F and New World Order people, and he is pretty so I have to really wonder what was going on with that decision. If somebody else maybe had something was said to him, someone pressed him or something like that. I mean, I'm just theorizing here, but or if he just arrived to that conclusion by himself because some of these other former Gray State guys that all this dirt has come out on now, if that just had him questioning everybody, you know what I mean?
Right.
I'd have to wonder. Not that I have any data either way, but I'd have to wonder.
Yeah, that's big. That's a big thing, and I think I think we need to wrap this episode up here. I want to let everybody who's joined us. I want to kind of give you, if you have any final words, anything that you want to say. But I definitely want to come back and continue this talk soon. And we covered a lot of ground, and there's so much more too. So we got a long way to go. So
we do.
Anybody got any final words here? Go ahead.
Well, one thing, dealing with the noise level, they do suspect, and I do suspect too, when you have a silencer or a means of silencing, especially a very loud 40, you can do it. And I think it was probably silenced, in my opinion. Going back to the point that it wasn't David that killed himself or anything, because they didn't find a silencer. There had to be a silencer used. Because I agree with you. Even down in the basement, a 40 makes a lot of bang.
For sure. But my question would be, what then? Put the silencer on David's pistol or a silencer on another 40 caliber to match the caliber. You know what I mean? So bring up a lot of questions for next time.
So that's something to think about. But the power, I can shoot my 45 in the house and the neighbor would hear it. Something went off.
I mean, I could probably shoot my 9 in the house and the neighbors can hear it, man. So
but if you get a good silencer or create one or bring one in that fits, then there's no contest at all. You don't hear anything. It's muffled to the point that it just becomes a little puff. What was that?
That's true.
Because nobody knows what a silenced gun sounds like unless you've heard one.
Right. Yeah, it's not like the movies, but yeah, I got to take off as well, guys. It's been a good discussion. I'll try to make the whole talk next time. Me and Greg have been kind of missing each other because I'm terrible on Facebook, but hit me up on Twitter if you guys are on there. ROSSGERACIPXF on Twitter. Check out the David Crowley interview on my channel, Planet X Records on YouTube, and shout out to Greg, Dan, everybody else who's been following the case. I'll be around.
Thank you, man.
All right. Thank you. And I'm Walter Bradley. Nobody knows me because I've been out in the background. I do my own thing.
You're recovering. You are recovering right now.
Yeah, I've had surgery, so it is. So keep me in prayer, and I've got more to come. And I had to give up a job because of the surgery. They said, we're not going to, I went, no. They couldn't hang with me. But the Father will take care of this. I'm not worried. I'm a faith man.
Yes.
I'm a believer, so I go with that. But thank y'all for all having me. I'm not the pro here. I'm learning, and I just throw out stuff that I think.
I think we all are.
Yeah, we are.
And
Me
to
too.
me, the more I look at it, the more questions I have. So thank y'all so much for all y'all's deep research and good
Agreed.
information. And it's
Thank you.
fabulous. Y'all are really fabulous at this. And when I first met
Oh.
Greg and started him on this path, kind of a little bit, I don't know if I had any influence in that, Greg. I think it's come up to a good state. It's come up to a great state.
A good state is
Anyway.
better than a
Yeah.
great state. Yeah.
All right.
A great
Well, y'all
state.
have a good night
A
there,
great
okay?
state.
Y'all take care.
Thank
How
you.
are you?
Have a good one, guys. Till next
too.
time.
Yeah. Take care.
Respect.
Bye-bye.
Shalom.
All right. Bye now. Anybody else have any final words that you want to say before we end this here?
I was just going to ask you really quick. Because they were talking about silencers and stuff like that. Did they match the bullets to the gun ballistically to make sure that they did come from that gun?
From what they say, yes, they all of them came from
Okay.
that gun.
Okay.
The one in the attic?
The one in the attic they compared to item 31, so that is really weird how they try to tie that. But if anybody wants to go and check it out for themselves, in the BCA 488 page document, it does have some black and white, very bad. I would like to get some better images of it, but it does go through all of that, and it does show how they fire. They compare test bullets, so they have 2 test bullets, and they compare those to all of the bullets fired. So I think it's very important for everybody to really go and check that out, and let's come back and let's see what everybody thinks about it, because when we're talking about item 57, I'm still not convinced on it based on what I've seen in those documents. There's something wrong.
Well, I want to get that 488 pages and start reading it like a book.
I'm going to send it to you right now.
Do it. I want to look. Now you've got me committed.
Good.
To looking at this now.
Good.
I have been just listening. I want to look at this, and I may make some calls and see. And now that I found out they're from Waco, it's just like finding out about the biggest Masonic lodge in Waco, and I'm going, good grief. I didn't, and when we were going over this, I didn't ever begin to think that Comel was from Waco. I never tied it to Texas or anything. And I looked up the New York, and she went to Baylor University, and I went, oh my gosh. Her parents live here. Her parents are still living here.
Yeah.
And that means that I could actually, I don't know if they'd want to talk to me, but
You
She
never know.
has a friend that Greg interviewed.
Send me
I
that-
can't remember her friend's name.
send me that
but
name, Greg,
Greg interviewed her.
because what I will do is I will go around them and become friends, without bringing up. I'll just look at,
No, you don't want to do that. You always want to be honest about it and just
oh yeah, I know.
yeah,
I
just
know.
try to if you're gonna reach out to them, let them know
Oh,
exactly.
I would, and I would be honest.
I know you would be.
You're laughing.
You couldn't help but be honest.
I know. You know me, Greg.
Yeah, I know you way too well. Yeah.
It's a tempting thought, though. But I would
It-
like to talk to the
Yeah.
family. And wow,
Somebody should.
she went to. I got some response with that.
Yeah, you did. You got a good response with that.
Get to know them real good.
Yeah, you never know.
Ask about do you have any daughters, son-in-laws, or anything? Happen to live in the area? They get
all
real
of-
suspicious
all
real
of
quick.
Camille's
Probably.
family lives out there.
Yeah, they do.
Camille's sister lives out there, but I don't think they would be open to talking. But
You never know.
But
I don't think so either.
Well, just pray on it,
But,
and if
I
it's
could
meant to
probably
be.
talk to Alex Jones down in Austin faster than I could get.
Yeah, well, you'd have to find
Yeah.
him first.
I know he's kind of fallen off the map
Yeah.
here recently. But anyway,
All right, my
Again-
friends.
thank y'all.
Thank you. Anybody else have any final words here before we check out?
Yes, I have one question. You said that you had a link that you couldn't send through YouTube, but you'd send it to the group, and I'm confused. But I want to know where I can find that video.
Yeah,
Of that
so
one guy who talked to David before he died.
right.
It's on the group page right now.
Yeah.
It's up. I looked. It's on the page, on the Justice for David Crowley and Family page.
Yeah, and
The
then
group.
what I'll do too is once I stop this video, I'll put it in the comments, or I'll put it in the description, and then that
And
way
send
you
me a
can
link
just
if you could, or I'll get
yeah
it there too.
yeah for sure, and then
Awesome.
you
Okay.
can just link it there.
Good.
Alrighty.
All right, y'all have a good night.
You
Take
too.
care.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate y'all for. See ya.
All right, good peeps. Unless we got anything else, I'm shutting this down. Y'all have a good night.
God bless, and I'm
God bless.
outie. Bye.
Okay, y'all all have a good night.
All right, you too.
Oh yeah, save this stream so I can listen to it again.
I will.
That'd be nice.
Alrighty.
Thank
All right,
you.
bye bye.
Until next time. Thanks
Okay,
everybody
bye.
for joining us on the Gray Stage live stream number 4. Today is 8/13/2019, and hopefully we'll come back within another couple days, and we will continue this conversation. We brought up a lot of stuff that we need to follow up on, so I'm looking forward to the next stream. See y'all then. Amen, and God bless you all.